Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and it's time to call the December 7th meeting to order. Mayor De La Isla and Deputy Mayor Padilla is absent, so at this time I will accept nominations to chair the meeting.
Madam Clerk, I'd like to nominate Karen Hiller, or Councilwoman Hiller.
Okay,
I second.
all right. Do we want to do roll call or by unanimous?
Unanimous.
You can do any objections.
Right, is there any objections to the nomination? All right, Councilmember Hiller will chair the meeting.
Thank you. At this point, to start the meeting, if everyone would rise if you are able. We want to start with just a moment of silence. Today is Pearl Harbor Day, and to take the moment of silence to reflect and appreciate our military, as well as our first responders who wait, prepared for anything to happen to take care of us and our families and our communities. And also in honor of Senator Bob Dole, who passed this week. So just a moment, please. Thank you. I'll refer to Councilman Dobler, who will introduce our speaker for our invocation.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I would like to introduce Captain Christian Lopez Zompa. Hope I pronounced that close to right.
Yes.
He is with the Topeka Salvation Army. He and his wife, Brooke, moved to Topeka in 2019 from Muscatine, Iowa. They have been pastors with the Salvation Army for 12 years. Captain Lopez is originally from Mexico, and Brooke is originally from Albert Lee, Minnesota. Captain Lopez is the first Hispanic officer in Topeka, and the team at the Salvation Army is thrilled to have him, as we are. Just want to point out that we're in the middle of the Red Kettle campaign season, so if you have some spare change as you approach the Dillons or Hy-Vee or wherever, please think of the Salvation Army and those that it serves. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you. Let's pray. Holy Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I pray, Lord, for the families of the ones of our soldiers who cover this nation, Lord. I pray that you touch them in a mighty way. I pray for their children, Lord. And I also pray for this city, wonderful city of Topeka, Lord. I pray that you enlighten the leaders that are here, Lord. I pray that your Holy Spirit pour your wisdom upon them, Lord. I pray that you touch them in a mighty way and that you protect them, Lord. I pray that for your grace and for your love and for your justice. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And with that, we'll have the roll call.
As announced before, Mayor De La Isla and Deputy Mayor Padilla are absent, so council members Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Aquila,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Padilla, Nager,
Here.
Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
and Leslie. We have 7 present.
Thank you. The next item would be appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Brad Lovelace to the Topeka Shawnee County Riverfront Authority Board for a term ending December 11, 2024. Items B, C, and D are board appointments recommending the reappointment of Kurt Young, Robert Bergquist, and Dean Patel to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for a term ending December 31, 2023. Items E and F are board appointments recommending the reappointment of Jeff Roman and Neil Carlson to the Board of Plumbing Examiners for a term ending December 30, 2023.
Would entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve A through F appointments. Any discussion? If not, time for a vote.
Council members Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. And I see at least some of our nominees here. Would those who have just been reappointed please stand to be recognized? Thank you so much. Our next item is a presentation. We're going to discuss the 2021 Community Health Needs Assessment. Who's presenting?
Brett Martins, the chair of the Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, will do the presentation.
Thank you.
Brett?
Deputy Mayor, council members, thanks for the opportunity to share. My name is Brett Martin. I'm the chair of Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, our local grassroots health and wellness coalition. I'd like to recognize just some of the folks who are here, who've been part of this process, who are present with us this evening. Teresa Fisher and Craig Barnes from Shawnee County Health Department, Carla Hedquist and Savannah Gomer from Stormont Vale Health, Andy Fry, Topeka Metro, and Eve Kendall, Shawnee County Corrections. They're all either a part of Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods leadership or are a part of this assessment. So let's take a look at this Community Health Needs Assessment. So this CHNA, or Community Health Needs Assessment, is orchestrated in order to gather information and meaningful feedback that we use to help us identify and work as a community on the health needs and health-related goals within Topeka and Shawnee County. Provides us a number of data points and documentation to help a number of stakeholders across the community to secure funds or to increase capacity in order to be able to meet some of these goals and outcomes in order ultimately to be able to improve the health of our community. The steering committee is made up of Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, as I said, the Grassroots Health and Wellness Coalition, Stormont Vale Health, a nonprofit hospital, and the Shawnee County Health Department. So the way in which we go about this is launching a community perception survey and a series of roundtables. So in the 2021 community feedback, what we saw was an increase in the number of participants, more than 2,500 responses to the community perception survey. Had a number of targeted roundtables, in particular looking at those populations that are underrepresented and oftentimes underserved, either by services or in terms of having their voice at the table for these particular surveys. We did see 95 attendees and more than 45 organizations who also participated in our town hall conversation. So while we did see increases, we do recognize that there's always opportunity for growth, but we were certainly pleased to see a number of folks participate this year. When we take a look at the survey participation, we did see more even distribution across age groups this year. We did see, in addition, some increases in participation, particularly in those in non-Caucasian groups. We did see an increase in African American and Hispanic representation in the survey, although we're certainly not meeting the percentages reflected in our community, and we recognize, again, opportunity for growth, but we were very pleased to see increases from 2018. Additionally, in 2021, we saw an opportunity to expand the community profile section to gather a little more information related to demographics, socioeconomic status, education, and then some questions related to COVID-19. In addition to that, we took a look at some surrounding counties. Before, I believe it was 12 counties that we took a look at in 2018, but we targeted it in 2021 to be able to look at a 4-county average, those counties that are close to us in proximity, but also most like us, in order to be able to take a look at some of our data and compare to neighboring communities. During our virtual town hall, we had hoped in earnest to be able to have our town hall meeting where we were able to prioritize these needs that were presented in the community health needs assessment. Unfortunately, we had to do that virtually, but we were able to partner with University of Kansas Center for Public Partnerships and Research, and Sarah O'Keefe was able to give us a graphic recording of the conversation, and I encourage you to take a look at that. She did a fine job grouping those topics and really giving the highlights of the conversation. In addition, during that town hall, Dr. Locke, our medical officer, was able to highlight some of the legacies of the pandemic, and a number of things are noted here that I will just bring to your attention. Obviously, a great deal of legislation taking place and an influx of dollars to be able to help states and local communities. We also saw unprecedented vaccine development, a number of efforts to invest in research and infrastructure, but we also saw a number of things exacerbated by the pandemic that many of us knew about. We often had qualitative and quantitative data about it, but we did see disparities, particularly racial and ethnic disparities, only increased as a result of the pandemic. What we did see in response to that in our community was a number of growing community partnerships as well, and we'll talk about that just a little later. So just to take a step back, this is a process that we go through every 3 years in order to be able to take a look at our community and to be able to make sure that we are keeping the voice of the community and the needs as reflected in individual community members, families, neighborhoods at the forefront. And so from the 2018 assessment, you see the priority areas that emerged from that community health needs assessment: mental health, safe access to food, substance abuse, and health equity. And you see where they ranked in the 2018 assessment. The process then moves from a needs assessment to the development of a plan. And so the community health improvement plan that we are currently in the midst of has these areas as priorities: behavioral health, access to food, substance abuse, and health equity. Continue to have work that's taking place in order to be able to make improvements in these areas. Obviously, we recognize that it took us years to get here, and it will take us years to make improvements. But there are a number of things to celebrate. Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, in the midst of this pandemic, was awarded a grant upwards of $500,000 from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas to carry out their Pathways work. And this is an opportunity for us to be able to affect the health of our community at the policy, systems, and environment level, and looking at the 3 risk factors that are the leading causes of chronic disease: physical inactivity, poor nutrition, and tobacco use. Additionally, we've continued to work, as I said, on the growing community partnerships, and we're pleased to announce that in 2022 we will have 2 new groups emerging in Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods: an STI collaborative, sexually transmitted infections, and also a behavioral health collaborative that is coming forward, and we're very happy to see those groups emerging. There's also been a number of folks working on a racial equity impact analysis group. As we mentioned, those disparities were exacerbated during COVID, and so we have folks who are working in that area. We've had a number of grants come to folks in our community related to substance abuse as well, and we've continued to have drug buyback programs and a number of other initiatives in the community as well. Related to food security, that's probably the area that you would know most about, and you probably have heard of programs like Operation Food Secure through Topeka Rescue Mission that sent fresh meat and dairy and produce to households during the pandemic. We also developed a food resources map that is curated by K-State Research and Extension to be able to keep up to date on the food resources that are available to folks in our community who are experiencing food insecurity, as well as the formation of the Shawnee County Farm and Food Advisory Council. You all have a city appointment on that advisory group. So a number of things that we have to celebrate in the midst of this current community health improvement plan. We did have a number of work groups that continued to meet during COVID, but some weren't able to meet for any number of different reasons, but met in different venues. One of those venues in particular is the COVID-19 Response and Coordination Meeting that began March 17th of 2019 and has continued to the present date, a cross-sector group that has met weekly to be able to tackle some of the issues, many of which are related to the social determinants of health in our community. So what does the new assessment tell us? What does this needs assessment that we've spent these months looking at, what does it tell us? What's the biggest opportunity for improvement in our community? What are some of the biggest concerns? Interestingly enough, what we find is that while there are small changes in the responses from the community, those areas of priority will likely continue from the current community health improvement plan to the next. Again, 4 major areas of work: mental health, healthy eating and obesity, substance abuse, and equitable access will continue to be those areas that will be areas of focus as reflected in the 2021 assessment. In addition to the data that was collected during this health needs assessment, there will be a number of data sources that will be considered as we look to develop the community health improvement plan between now and December of 2022, looking at things like the county health rankings, the BRFSS data, taking a look at other counties as well, and looking at these areas, taking all of this data together, and then having those prioritized by the community and stakeholders in order that we have a chip that not only reflects the needs, but also reflects our community. So what are the next steps? What are those things that we are looking to do? So there's feedback on this health needs assessment, and there's a survey available, and you have that link. You also have it in your report. To continue to re-engage with Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, and I'm the contact as the chair for that organization. And so if there are folks who are interested in working through work groups on this, there are certainly many opportunities through Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods. If you want to sort of imagine the partners here, you think of sort of Stormont Vale Health and Shawnee County Health Department as leading this work, and Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods as the organization that's implementing the strategies in order to be able to drive the improvement. Lots of action planning available, and hoping to have that chip completed by December 2022, as I mentioned, and then continuing ongoing monitoring, gathering data throughout the chip in order to ensure, again, that we are listening to the community and that we are reflecting those needs accordingly. I would say a couple of other things as well. When we think about this community health needs assessment and we think about the community health improvement plan, much of what is done here is tied to any number of different things, 2 of which in particular are of, I think, specific importance to a body like this. And that's economic development and workforce development. When we hear from the community about the needs, the health needs in particular that they are experiencing, it gives us an opportunity to be able to act on that in meaningful ways, whether it's through the community health improvement plan or any number of other initiatives throughout the community. When you think about the connections between health and economic development and workforce development, you think about things like production losses in our workplaces because individuals are unhealthy. You think about productivity in terms of losses, in terms of worker illness, folks who are missing work either because of poor physical health days or poor mental health days. When you think about our students who are working in the classroom, their health is directly related to absenteeism and absentee rates. And we know that when children are not present in the classroom, they are not learning. And so whether it's our youngest citizens in Topeka or our older citizens, we know that something like this community health needs assessment and the community health improvement plan provide a lot of information for folks to be able to consider when making decisions. I would love for to have an opportunity in this community to be able to ask the question, what does the community health needs assessment say? What does the community health improvement plan say when we're looking at policies, when we're looking at making decisions, whether it's city level, county level, or even state level? Thanks for giving us some time today. We appreciate the opportunity to share, and I'd invite any questions that you might have.
Questions? I want to thank you, Brent. Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods is what, 15 years old now? About?
Yeah, almost.
Tremendous coalition that started out strong and has sustained the strength of participation, has grown the number of focus groups, it looks like. We've got nodding from back here. Thank you, Health Department, for sponsoring that, but and United Way for leadership now. This is phenomenal. If people want to get this online or in paper, how would they do it, Brett?
Yeah, so they can get that at the Health Department website. They can also get it at the Stormont Vale Health website, so they can get it at both places.
So Shawnee County Health Department.
And Stormont Vale Health.
Stormont Vale Health.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments, anyone in the body? All right,
Thanks, appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right, moving on. Our next item is the consent agenda. Clerk will read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of September 25 through October 29, 2021, and enumerating said expenditures therein. B is notice of redemption, authorizing and directing the partial call and redemption of $5.9 million of taxable general obligation temporary notes, Series 2021B of the City of Topeka, Kansas, on December 18, 2021, originally issued in the amount of $6.9 million on November 3, 2021. C is approval of a utilities contract in the amount of $555,058 for professional engineering services between the City of Topeka and Black & Veatch Corporation to advise the city in developing, managing, and implementing a compliance program for the revised United States Environmental Protection Agency lead and copper rule. D is approval of a public works contract for professional engineering services between the City of Topeka and Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions Incorporated to provide for master planning services for projects along the Shunganugga Creek that will help reduce flood risk but fall outside of the scope of the work anticipated to be performed in conjunction with the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Items E, F, G, H, and I are approval of the public works contracts for professional engineering services between the City of Topeka and Alfred Banish and Company, Bartlett and West Incorporated, Cook, Flatt, and Strobel Engineering, PA, Professional Engineering Consultants, PA, and Sunflower Design, LLC, to aid the city in addressing capital projects. Items J and K are approval of public works contracts for professional engineering and design services between the City of Topeka and SBB Engineering, LLC, to prepare preliminary design and estimates for the Horseshoe Bend Subdivision Number 6 and Number 7, Sanitary Sewer Benefit District Project T401103, Project Petition, and Street and Storm Sewer Benefit District Project T601130, Project Petition. L are minutes of the regular meeting of November 9 and November 16, 2021, and there's a list of cereal malt beverage applications, and staff is recommending approval.
Thank you so much. City Manager, we spoke a little bit in advance because this listing all these contracts is very new for us. Was recommended, I think, out of the Public Works Infrastructure Committee. Is that right, or was it Policy and Finance? Policy and Finance. Okay. And it can be a little overwhelming to have such a long list, and it's new. I'd ask the city manager to give us just a little context for what these contracts are.
Thank you, Councilwoman Heller. C's contract, I should say, 4C is a contract related to utilities lead and copper rule compliance. We have a requirement to go through and analyze our system to determine whether we have lead and copper issues for our service lines and other lines. So that is for the study to be conducted in order to accomplish that. 4D relates to the Shunganunga Creek Stormwater Master Plan. We identified that as an area that we need to consider some improvements related to flood control. And so this plan, master plan as it developed, will give us guidance to be able to make decisions on what type of improvements we want to make along that creek. E, F, G, H, and I relate to a need based on current staffing levels in the engineering department to have engineers on call to be able to conduct project management for projects that we have that are going. And so that is an opportunity for us to be able to contact each of these firms that are pre-qualified to be able to hire them in order to be able to do that project management. Very critical right now given our shortage of engineers. J and K relate to both the street work and utility work related to the new Horseshoe Bend subdivision improvements that will occur. These are projects that will be reimbursed that we've already looked at the special assessment bonds being approved for. So it's simply moving forward with those contracts that are gone through us and then eventually paid back by the developer.
In general, I just want to make sure that the intent of the committee is being satisfied with the information that you have. We don't have information about, for instance, what was budgeted and what the contract actually came out to be, or what bidding was done. Just want to make sure before we proceed. If this is fine with everybody, we will proceed and vote, but if anybody wants more conversation about any of these, we can pull them.
I'll make a comment to that, but as this is the consent agenda, I think we need a motion and a second. Or
what I wanted to do was have discussion pre-motion of understanding what was on it, since this is such a new batch.
that's fine.
So go ahead.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I'm the one who originally brought this ordinance to Policy and Finance, which was passed by the governing body a few months ago. This is exactly what its intent was. I think that we have a lot of these kinds of contracts that the public is not aware of, and that, to be honest, we frankly aren't aware of, are happening until, as I said before, it's after the fact and it's a little too late for all practical purposes. The goal moving forward is, when you see these, it gives you an opportunity a week or several weeks before to say, what the heck is that? And I would like to pull that one off the consent agenda and have a discussion about it before we vote on it. This gives us that opportunity as a governing body, or if we've had our review and said, no questions, great, we move on, we pass it, and at least then we've been aware of it. And I hope what we find over time is it gives us some of that awareness of what all those pieces are, and gives us an opportunity moving forward to say, I want to have a conversation. So yes, so from my perspective, it looks like a lot because it is, but I think that's important transparency for all of us moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The other thing it does is means that we're voting on this instead of having it done administratively only. So that's a big responsibility as well. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question then. So we'll be seeing more of this more often, correct?
Anytime there's a project over 50,000 for consultant hiring, it will come before this council for approval.
Okay, but we won't necessarily see a dollar amount attached to it.
No, the contract, usually you will actually, the contracts you have for project management services is kind of an anomaly for what we normally would see. Most of the time, the amounts are already negotiated and so forth. This is to have them on call and available to us, and we won't know specifically what project they'll accomplish. A lot of them won't end up being over 50,000 because it's project management. Some might be, but this is really pre-qualifying them to be able to move forward with that when needed.
Okay, thank you.
For Councilwoman Ortiz as well. If there aren't, I just want to make sure, since this is so new, if people were comfortable with what we've got before we moved on. If there are no concerns about this at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve, and thank you to the clerk for reading all of that.
Amen.
She figured out how to keep it a little shorter, right? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, council members Emerson,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
All abstain?
Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 6 yes with 1 abstention. Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Next item, we move to action items. Item A, 5A.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, amending City of Topeka Code Section 3.40030, establishing a service fee levy for 2022 relating to the Capital City Downtown Business Improvement District, and specifically repealing said original section.
City Manager?
Thank you, Councilwoman Hiller. Tonight, this is a normal procedure that we handle on an annual basis. I'd ask Rhiannon Friedman to come forward and make any comments she had regarding the continuation of this levy.
Thank you, and welcome, Rhiannon.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present. Okay, so I know that everybody received this report beforehand, and it's a little lengthy, so I'm just going to try to hit the highlights for everybody. But it's standard practice that every year the Business Improvement District, as a part of our contract with the city, creates an annual report, and also 2 mid-year reports that we send out to all the constituents a part of the BID to make them aware of the services that we're providing through this district program. Can I advance this? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so here's just an overview of the advisory board itself and the makeup of the members. Ken Scott is the current advisory board chair. And then our mission statement, of course, is always focused on creating an attractive physical environment and an attractive economical environment as well to help promote businesses and tenants that want to spend time in downtown Topeka. We're also striving to achieve excellence in quality of life, maintaining that center of government, commerce, culture, history, and recreation. So our 2021 program of services, you'll see that per the contract, our program of services that have been outlined do not change year to year. These services are something that we will always offer, but what does change is that, although each year they remain the same, we continue to add additional benefits through marketing opportunities, promotional opportunities, and as we continue to grow downtown and bring new businesses in, they become a part of this district as well. Just a quick overview, so general maintenance and cleaning of the district, maintenance of the equipment that it takes to do those projects as well. We're getting ready to hit that time of the year where inclement weather will become a thing, so snow removal on the sidewalks from 4th to 10th down Kansas Avenue, and then the side streets from 6th through 10th as well. Spraying for weeds, and providing administrative services that come throughout the district. So those would be any of our office overhead, insurance, salaries, benefits. This is all administered through the district services as well. And then, of course, what we all experienced here just last weekend is the collaboration with the city to provide Christmas lights and banners on Kansas Avenue, and some more new things that came this year as well. So just to kind of quickly jump through some of these for you. So of course, the overall administration of the BID is something that DTI partners with the city on. We work really closely with the city team to ensure that the correct invoices are sent out and that timely payment is received on those as well. And then the BID maintenance, this takes a majority of the time of the Business Improvement District. So we're very fortunate to have Paul Cervantes on staff full-time with DTI. So Paul's my right-hand man when it comes to providing maintenance downtown. So Paul works Monday through Saturdays at 7 a.m. And then frequently whenever we have events on Saturdays, you'll see him around downtown on Sundays cleaning up after to make sure that everything is as it should be. So Paul does trash removal, pre-treats the sidewalks for weather. So we're also working on this year, we'll be getting Paul some new uniforms. So I've seen that he's still got a DTI shirt on that's got maybe 2 logos back. So we're going to fix that this year, and we're going to make sure that Paul is a welcome presence, and when people see him, they recognize that he's a part of the Business Improvement District. This year, we were able to, after the slow time that we had in 2020 with COVID, we were able to bring in some dollars and add some new programming into 2021. That new programming came in the way of a downtown restaurant week. We were finding that many of the businesses were still doing remote work or a hybrid program, so we weren't getting that lunchtime rush into the downtown restaurants that we were used to seeing. So Downtown Restaurant Week was an idea that was put together in partnership with AIM Strategies to really encourage folks to get downtown and go support those local restaurants and try out some of the new specials or offerings that they had during that time period. Another piece of that was also Topeka Music Week. So as we know, the Heartland Stampede, the Kicker Country Stampede rather, brings 40,000 people to Topeka. And we thought, well, why would we not capitalize on trying to pull these folks out from just from the raceway and trying to bring them into the heart of our community? So we were able to partner with Evergy Plaza, the Jayhawk Theater, and some of the local restaurants and bars to find entertainment that could engage those folks at a local level as well. And then I'm not sure if everybody was able to make it down, but if not, you certainly missed a show this weekend for the Miracle on Kansas Avenue Christmas Parade. So this parade is definitely one of the services that the BID helps administer. We were able to actually light all the trees on the avenue this year from 6th to 10th Street, and Porterfield's helped us with some amazing wreaths that are lit on the archways too. So it just feels even a little bit more like Christmas this year downtown. There's been a large effort to increase the amount of marketing and advertising that the BID offers to those businesses that fall within the district. So it's important to us that we open up opportunities that these small businesses might not have on their own. We partner with KSNT right now, and we're doing a holiday commercial campaign where DTI, KSNT, and Capital Federal have all put money into a fund to allow these businesses to join in for ad space and to buy commercial time they might not be able to afford without. So just a way to help add some added benefit to being a part of the district. And then new businesses downtown. I will be brief, and I won't read all through all these because I think I do it just about every time I talk about downtown the past several months. There's like 7 new businesses that have opened in the past 4 months downtown. They're all small, local. It's a lot of entertainment when it comes to the T-Box, when it comes to Spawn Inn, a local gaming lounge. There's just all kinds of exciting things that are popping up around downtown. So we'll continue to welcome them into the neighborhood and add them into our marketing and our promotions as we move forward as well. This year, we established a new DTI website, which was very exciting. I think the primary reason that we were targeting this is the website had not been touched in some time. It needed some love. We were really trying to shift towards more of an economic development focus. As we start going out and we talking about the opportunities that there are in downtown and talking about the master plan that's been established, it's important that when we talk about that with developers, that when they type in Downtown Topeka Inc., that they can find our incentives, they can find our available properties, they can understand what it's like to do business with the city. So this was a big step for us this year that has paid off. And then, of course, the approval of the master plan. And I will, I'll leave it with some things that we're looking forward to in 2022. I will say some of the things that we're looking forward to trying to budget for is digital signage, really trying to enhance the amount of signage that we have into downtown wayfinding. We find that there's plenty of people that come down for lunch to visit the plaza on Wednesdays, but helping them understand what else is going on throughout the district so it keeps them moving instead of just, stopping at one place, but keep them going throughout the district while they're there. We'll be looking at some additional landscaping potential, trying to expand the beautification that's already taken place. And then, of course, I'm sure that you've all heard by now about this really cool thing called Dino Days that Downtown Topeka and DTI would love to be a part of. So I'm looking forward to that, certainly. All right. Well, I will leave you with funding recommendations. So working with the BID Advisory Board, it was recommended that we move forward with the same assessment rates as 2021 for 2022. So those are in front of you, the same rates that were assessed as last year. So I mean, really with that being said, this is the breakdown of the tiers in the districts. And I would say one of the changes that we look to bringing forward is in January and February is when we start to distribute the letters and the information about the BID, and individual businesses report back to us their space usage. We had a great idea this year that we'll be moving this process digitally. We have wonderful technology through the Greater Topeka Partnership with capability and tools like Salesforce. So it only makes sense for DTI to leverage those tools and be able to take advantage of that as well. So I would be happy to stand for any questions that you guys might have.
Questions? Councilman?
I'm just curious, how was the advisory board selected?
Yeah, so the advisory board was, it's originally made up with board members that, they're either past or present board members that have joined in over time, but yeah, that's, you had to be a board member whenever you were joined a part of the advisory board committee.
Right, so who selects those individuals to that board? To that
Yeah, so
advisory
it's a combination, if I recall. I'll have to look back at the contract to be sure. I've not added a new member since I've started in my role, but I believe it's a process where it has to be approved by council and by the DTI board. It's a recommendation that goes forward and the two parties agree, but I'd have to verify that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, we just approved 3 reappointments tonight on the appointments. And so, and it's in District 1. I used to be involved in it, but I haven't been in a long time. The board recommends the name, has in recent years recommended the names directly to the mayor, and the mayor brings them forward to us. The process. And just to clarify overall, with a wonderful presentation, Rhiannon, what we are talking about here is approving a budget for an assessment that comes in from the businesses and gets spent downtown. This is not a tax dollars city budget, but instead is we actually officially run that bid district, or you run it, but we're responsible to vote the budget and the assessments, and that's what we have on our plate this evening. Any questions? Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Take the vote, please.
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Pillar,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz, and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you so much. Now we will move to a related item 5B. City Manager?
You want to let her read?
I'm sorry.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, amending City of Topeka Code Section 365035, establishing a service fee levy for 2022 related to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District, and specifically repealing said original section.
Yes, tonight we are looking at continuing the imposition of a service fee through the TBID, Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District. Kurt Young is here to present related to that item. Kurt?
Well, and I just misspoke because our 3 reappointments were to the TBID board.
I was going to point
You
that out.
probably were. Anyway, got ya.
First off, I want to let you know that 2 of the 3 appointments you made, Dean and Rob, are both home fulfilling father responsibilities, taking care of their kids tonight. So they would have, I'm sure, by now enjoyed the opportunity to be here tonight. So I'm going to digress just a little bit from the written report that I submitted. You have it. You can refer to it. But I want to take just a minute and give you a little bit of history and go back a little bit in time here. The TBID was established actually in 2016. It was established in 2017. We began the effort to establish it in 2016. And that was really an outgrowth of the Topeka Lodging Association's effort and involvement since 2013 in getting transient guest tax dollars allocated to build a plaza. And once we achieved that, we immediately went into a process of establishing a TBID, a Tourism Business Improvement District, to provide funding for the plaza once it was built. Initially, that funding was directed to pay 100% of the architectural cost for designing the plaza. And I do this primarily just so everybody is acquainted with how we got to where we are now. We're in the 4th year. We will complete it at the end of this month, the 4th year of collecting T-bid revenue for the Evergy Plaza in one form or another. And I'm going to jump right to what is, I think, my high point out of this, is that as of today, in year-to-date this year and 2018, 19, and 20, we have given $1,381,185 and change to the Downtown Topeka Foundation as owners of the Evergy Plaza. That includes all of the money that was given to the foundation to pay the architectural bills. Since those bills were paid in full, everything has gone to the operation of the plaza. Sitting as the vice chair currently of the Downtown Topeka Foundation, I can tell you that that is very much needed revenue, and we would not be able to operate the plaza without that Business Improvement District money coming in from the Lodging Association T-bid fee. So that gives you a little bit of the history of how we got to where we are today, why it's important. We set probably a little bit too aggressive of a budget for 2021. We're going to be under budget in terms of revenue collected. As of today, we've collected approximately $301,000 year to date in 2021. We were up over 400 in terms of our budget, so yes, we got a little bit aggressive on our budget. I think we were a little maybe too optimistic in how quickly COVID was going to let us get back to normal. We've had a very exciting year this year on the plaza. I think many of you, most of you, if not all of you, have spent time on the plaza at various events. And I can tell you that we're looking forward to a lot more activities, a lot bigger activities. We've got some big things planned for 2022. So with that, I would ask tonight for your consideration and approval of reinstating and continuing the $1 fee per sold hotel room in Topeka. Our membership has been very supportive of the T-bid, and I think it's just something that we want to continue. It was set up to go for 10 years when it was initiated in 2017, and that would be our recommendation tonight, to reinstate that $1 fee. I'll take any questions that anybody. One thing I did want to say that I left out. In the past, about 7 to 7.5% of the total money that we collect, the foundation gets about 82% of what we collect. 7.5% goes into a contingency fund. And the Tourism Business Advisory Board administers that money. We have taken money from that account for various special needs. As you are aware, the Kansas Kids Wrestling Tournament comes to Topeka every year. The Topeka Lodging Association subsidizes that event, believed to the tune of $5,000. And every year, so that's an ongoing expense that we take out of the contingency fund. Most recently, if you were at the Visit Topeka's press conference earlier, I guess it was last week, time flies, last Monday, regarding Dino Days that are coming to Topeka. There are 3 venues involved in that: the Great Overland Station, the Topeka Zoo, and the Kansas Children's Discovery Center. Following that presentation last Monday, that press conference at the Great Overland Station, TLA, Topeka Lodging Association, presented the Kansas Children's Discovery Center with a check for $10,000 from the contingency fund to help them defray the costs of their participation in that Dino Days event. So I can assure you that the money is being put to good use, and it is going right back into travel and tourism in some manner. So, and I apologize, I backed up a little bit there and forgot that. So back to my request to renew the $1, and I'll bid you fond adieu. So.
Are there questions? I would point out, just so everybody knows, that they need us to actually levy a transient guest tax. But it was their idea, and they're doing wonderful things with it. And Kurt's been involved all along. We really appreciate you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Oh, please.
Thank you for your presentation. So you were saying that you were a little aggressive with your budget, and that in 2021, we didn't bounce back as quickly as all of us would have hoped. What does that mean? What were the consequences of that over or under budgeting?
I think we budgeted $450,000 for 20 in total receipts. Now, keep in mind what we receive from the city finance department is less the 2% that the city assesses for an administrative fee. So I think what it boils down to, I don't know what December is going to bring. I'm guessing at this point that we'll finish up this year after the December receipts are deposited somewhere in the neighborhood of $425,000. So we're going to be $25,000 to $35,000 short of what we budgeted for this year. And everything that we distribute is based on percentages. The Downtown Topeka Foundation gets 81.95% of whatever we bring in. And Kansas Kids Wrestling gets $5,000, so I have to work backwards on that to establish a percentage. But since everything's based on a percentage as far as the distribution, everybody just comes down a little bit in what we would have given them. But we'll wind up being somewhere around $35,000 short.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions, comments? Councilman?
I'd move approval.
Moved. Councilman Emerson moves to approve. Second from Councilwoman Nager. Any other discussion? If not, ready to vote?
Council members Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Clerk, I respectfully ask that I pass and you come back to me at the end. Thank you. I checked. I can do that.
Okay.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Pass. No, I'm kidding. Yes. That'd get you. That'd put you in a quandary.
you were yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a yes.
Councilmember Nager
Yes.
and Councilmember Duncan.
So there's only 7 of us here this evening, and it took 6 for this to pass, which is why I passed until the end, because I wanted to be careful, because I respect this program. I understand its purpose and need. I voted no last year and gave Kurt heartburn to no end, and he has explained to me how wrong I am many times, and he and I agree to disagree. I believe wholeheartedly in the mission of what this $1 does. Even before I got on this council, I just sort of had issues with the $1 going to a very targeted thing in the city, and I won't rehash my concerns, but I am going to vote no this evening to stay consistent but I was not going to let it die if there were 2 no votes, knowing that we had a slim margin tonight. So that is why I passed, and I wanted to keep with my vote, but make that clear. So thank you very much, and I vote no.
And you're right, we still disagree.
Okay, so we have 6 yes, motion carries. Councilman Duncan voting no.
Yeah, there's a little crossover here. Uh-oh. All right, we're ready to move on. Item 5C. City Clerk?
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning Citizen Advisory Council, amending Section 225040 of the Topeka Municipal Code and repealing original section.
City Manager?
So tonight, we had this as a discussion item previously, and tonight we ask for your consideration of approval of changes to the CAC ordinance that were made based on the new Community Engagement Division being formed.
Thank you, City Manager. Before we proceed, I'm the person who has raised some questions about this in the past, and I just wanted to share with everyone that I have, for one thing, read the updated CAC bylaws, which do match the language that's in the ordinance before us. My understanding is I will still feel that it's too limiting and that we should add language, but the language has been similar to that before. They've done a wonderful job of tightening up and syncing them up. And unless Susan McClarity, who's signed up to speak, has changed her mind about it, I will support the language as is. So with that, if there are questions, fine. Otherwise, we do have a conferee. Susan, you want to come up?
I'm fine. I just wanted to be, yeah, I'm fine.
Well, that person was Susan McClarity, the chair of the CAC. And so if people do have questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to reply. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion. Motion to approve from Councilwoman Nager. Second from Councilman Dobler. Vote.
Okay, council members Duncan,
Yes.
Councilmember Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, item D, the 2022 Topeka Dreams Grant awardees. City Clerk?
D is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout approving the 2022 Topeka Dreams grants.
So last week, LaToya Burnett presented the recommendations of the CAC for the Topeka Dreams grant awardees. So at this point, I guess we stand for any questions you may have regarding the recommendations for the grant awardees.
I see Ms. McClarity also signed up just in case there are questions. All right, thank you. So we do not have a conferee unless you have questions. Any questions or comments? Councilwoman Ortiz? I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Emerson. Second. Second by Councilwoman Nager.
All right, we have council members Hiller,
Yes?
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz. Yes. Emerson,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
Wrap-up comment on that is that's really exciting. There were, for those who followed it in the past or online, very interesting grants. First run at doing in the new Dreams concept of neighborhoods bidding on a variety of things at a higher level. So thank you for your leadership at the CAC and getting that going. Those awards are processed through the members of the Citizens Advisory Council and went well. So, good job. Next item is item E, public hearing and ordinance about budget amendments.
E is a public hearing and an appropriation ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout approving and adopting certain amendments to the operating budget for the City of Topeka for the year 2021 and appropriating the amounts for the purpose as set forth therein.
City Manager?
So tonight, this is a request, we're having a hearing, public hearing, and then the moving forward of the approval of the budget amendments as presented. This does not, what we would consider how we would use any surplus funding We will be bringing that forward to you at an additional meeting in December. This is simply the amendments to ensure that our funds have the proper amounts allocated for them based on the calculations done by staff.
And since this is a public hearing, and since there are only two, right? If you could identify what they are, we will open the public hearing and invite comments.
Sure. The two items are an expenditure budget, increasing the amount for the Information Technology Fund from $4,162,087 to $4,337,087, and also an amendment changing the federal funds exchange amount from $774,811, increasing that amount to $1,562,166.
And forgive me if I'm not paraphrasing very well, but both of these have to do with just balancing out revenue and expenses because of some changes that occurred during the year after we passed the budget.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Without any further ado, I will open the public hearing on that process. Do I have a script down here, Amanda, for the public hearing?
Probably not, but.
Oh, that's fine.
Madam Chair, you can just ask anybody who signed up to speak to come up and talk and then close it after they're done.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have anyone signed up to speak, but I think because it is a public hearing, we need to, I don't show anybody, do we? Okay. Need to open it up and offer 3 times for anybody who's here that wants to speak on this subject to come forward. So would anyone like to speak on these 2 items? I'll ask a second time. Is there anybody here? Or we may have some viewers online who will need to indicate through the chat that they want to speak to whoever's managing all that in the universe of everyone watching. 3rd time, is there anyone who wants to comment on these budget amendments? If not, we will close the public hearing. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Dobler and Emerson. Any discussion, questions? If not, we'll go to a vote.
Councilmembers Valdivia Akla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Hiller.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
I don't know if there's any magic to that. The finance staff is bumping fists, but to only have 2 is pretty darn good, so congratulations. The next item is item F, legislative priorities.
F is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout relating to the City of Topeka's legislative agenda for the 2022 legislative session.
City Manager.
Ashley, I would defer to Councilman Duncan to cover that since they covered it in his committee.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Chair. I am not going to go over this list line by line. I'll just highlight a couple changes or additions that we made from what was previously proposed to us by Whitney Dameron, our lobbyist, and then I'll tell you sort of what plan of action we look to take moving forward to help this process. In regards to docking, we will continue to support some of the recommendations made by the committee. One of the additions we made, though, is there is some historic value either to that building or within that building. And we just ask that as they move forward, if they have items or pieces or some form of that, they come to the city and say, we want to preserve this, can you participate in that process? We think the historic preservation piece is important and has not been part of their discussion or recommendations, and we'd like those discussions to be included. In regards to the lab, they have said they will go to K&I. That is still up for debate. We don't feel we don't need to take a position on where they build it as long as it's at one of the locations they're recommending, because those are still in Topeka, and that's our primary goal. So we'll support that, but our goal will continue to keep it in Topeka. There were 2 items added that were not previously discussed by this body. One was there is a group that at some point we will get a presentation in regards to the Menninger Tower that wants to preserve that. There are some state funding options that may be available to them, and we certainly thought if that comes up through legislation, we want to be supportive of any group that wants to help restore and keep that tower. So we would be supportive of their efforts up in the Capitol building. There will also be some discussion on a taxpayer Bill of Rights at the legislature this year. Nobody knows what that's going to look like. That is one we'll have to monitor week to week, but we do know that the position will be that we need to retain our autonomy here as a municipality, so don't step on any of our home rule authority or rights and take other tools away from us as they move forward. The state can do what they want with what they collect, but we'd like them to leave us alone. That will be our general position. And the last one I'll touch on related to the sales tax on food. We did not take a position on what that should be. It is our belief that there will be some movement to lower the sales tax, whether that is 0 or 1% or something in between, we don't know. We would be generally supportive of that as a city. What we think they need to do, though, is, again, stay in their lane. If they want to lower the state portion of that, but allow us as a municipality to control the local portion of that tax and make our own decision what we want. That's about 2 and some %. So that will be our position on that issue moving forward. There's other issues there. If you have questions, feel free to ask myself or Councilman Emerson or Councilmember Nager. I will follow up then with just the second piece of what we did. One of the discussions we had here at the larger body was we need to do this before today, right before the second week of December. So we are going to outline a calendar that will put this in motion earlier. We will start those discussions in July. We will ask that a member of the policy committee every year attend the League of Kansas Municipalities event where they discuss these issues so that in August, so they can bring that back with the idea that something comes to this body either late September or early October for discussion so that by December there's already something in play. And lastly, a portion of that will be sort of what we'll call a living document that moves forward. It will be modeled essentially off something that the League of Municipalities does, where these issues will always stay in front of everybody, and then each year as they get reviewed, they can either be removed, something can be added, or they can be changed based on what's happening. That'll not just help us move through the process, but it also allows us when we say, what is our position as a city, or when one of those elected officials at the Capitol wants to know, we can point them to that living document so they know what our position is. So that's the work we did. That's what we have brought forward to you today. If there are any questions, I'm sure we are all happy to take them, and that's what we've got for you.
Okay, and I see Whitney Dameron's in the audience. If people have questions, he is here as well. I just want to compliment you on your work, and also I consulted with Steve, kind of worried about the sales tax issue, and if the state did cut off our share of the food sales tax, we would lose $5 million a year. We are not talking chump change here in what the committee has put into this resolution. So thank you for that. Or is the 5 million the whole, did I misstate anything?
Excuse me, we actually have exposure in 3 different areas. One is the general fund, and that's the $5 million number. One is in our Save Our Streets sales tax fund, which is approximately $2.5 million. And there's also some exposure to our JADO funds that we use for some projects.
Thank you. And that is if the state cuts their own?
That's if we eliminate it on local. If we, on the state side, we'd be fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Dameron. Maybe just a minute on the likelihood of the elimination of the sales tax and the likelihood that the state would force that elimination onto municipalities without their consent.
There does not appear to be a movement to eliminate sales tax on food at the local level. And as the discussion has gone so far, it has been elimination of the 6.5% or reduction over a period of time. There's some sense that the state will have a significant ending balance June 30th of 2022, and spending that down through something like repeal of the sales tax on food might be a good use of money instead of spending it on other programs that over a period of time will get baked into the budget and create challenges down the road. And so there's some thought about doing something big like that, or at least starting the process of ratcheting that down.
Great. Thank you very much.
Councilwoman?
Thank you, Chair. I would just say, ask that Steve Wade send me that information that you said he provided, and he just provided now. I had asked that question by email and had not received an answer, so not from Steve, but from city manager. I think it got lost in the shuffle of everything that's happening with how busy everyone is, but I would appreciate that forwarded to me as well. Thank you.
Will do.
Yeah. Numbers are helpful whenever those kinds of proposals are floating around. Any other, I'm watching you, Councilwoman Ortiz, in case you have something. Any other questions or comments?
I have a quick comment.
Please.
I just want to share my appreciation for Councilman Duncan for chairing this committee. With your background, you were able to go ahead and elucidate a lot of issues that I wasn't necessarily aware of with my expertise. And so I just really appreciate you bringing light to these very important issues for our body. So thank you.
We do have a conferee, Mr. Joseph Ledbetter. Do you want to speak to this?
Board, governing body. I spoke to some of these things a few weeks ago, and I think the councilman's done a good job in putting these into a more succinct manner after those initial comments. And I do appreciate that committee, especially on bringing forward the contracts and increasing our transparency. We still have work to do, but we'll talk about that another time. One of the things that although I think this is a great list, I do want to make sure, and I know there's no problem with it at this time, but I want to make sure that our highway funds and those budgets continue to be amply funded, because we got into a lot of trouble statewide and locally because that KDOT budget was not funded for many years. And I think that every year we need to make sure that's part of what we're lobbying for as a capital city, to make sure that we're at the table, because KDOT knows when we're lobbying. They know when we're not as well. And it's very apparent in the way they've allocated projects over the last few years and before. One of the things that I keep seeing, and I'm just going to say I'm not in disagreement with this, but we keep talking about abandoned housing, and that's fine. I have no problem with bringing that up to the state. I think it's you get more into property rights with a lot of the council or the legislators up there, so it makes it a harder battle. But what I don't want to lose sight of is, I would say 99+9% of the problems we have in code enforcement are not about this. We have ongoing landlords that just don't maintain their properties. And I'll talk about that a little later in the meeting. So I don't want to lose focus when we bring these kinds of things up with the legislature, that we already have many, many tools in the box to deal with these problems locally. And I want to see that ramped up, and I've been asking for it for 6 years. But other than that, this is a good list, and I'm very happy with the work that your committee did. Thank you.
Anything else? Entertain a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Nager.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. Great credit to the committee. Further discussion? Seeing none?
Councilmembers Ortiz?
Yes.
Emerson?
Yes.
Nager?
Yes.
Dobler?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Pillar?
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila?
Yes.
We have 7 yes. Motion carries.
That wraps up our action items. We move into the non-action items. The first one, item A, is American Rescue Plan discussion. Clerk?
A is discussion regarding the allocation of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds for the city of Topeka.
City Manager, there was some confusion about this one, so clarify what you have in mind for this
Yeah,
evening.
and the issue is that this was to be on 2 meetings ago, to finish the presentations that we had intended to do as it relates to staff information related to ARPA. And so what we are asking tonight is a presentation by Braxton Copley as it relates to the utilities projects that are being proposed for consideration for funding once you get to that point. And Braxton has a presentation, so I ask Braxton to come forward and please give that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, governing body. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss the list of projects that I would propose for potential ARPA funding. We had some good news today, and that is the Kansas Department of Transportation informed us that given the huge amount of money necessary for utility relocations, over $20 million, that they will consider allowing the application of any money that we use for utility relocation to apply towards the $20 million matching share that we have under the obligation that we have under the contract, provided that those utilities are located within city right-of-way or easement and not within existing Kansas Department of Transportation easement. Having just gotten that information today, I have turned to my consultant who provided me with the cost estimates and asked, can you refine these cost estimates now to break out for me what would potentially be eligible for the city's matching share versus those that would not be? So I will provide that updated information once I have that. But the bottom line is that there is over $20 million of utility infrastructure that is in conflict with this project that has to be relocated to accommodate this project. My ask would be to use ARPA funding because I don't have utility funding slated to do that. The benefit to the city would be if, let's just use an example, 10 million of it fell within city right-of-way that could be used for the city's $20 million obligation. We could use ARPA funds, pay for that relocation, and then get a credit towards the city's $20 million out of ARPA funds without having to use the GO bonds that was initially planned for the city's share. Obviously, these are not the decisions that the utilities director makes. So I just put it out there in terms of this would be one way that you guys could decide. I just want you to know what the options are and then move from there. So with that segue, I'll just quickly go through what my recommended projects would be based on the fact that we have over 20 million of utility relocation for Port Quincy. On the water side, we're looking at about 1.6 million is what's needed to do water line relocation for Port Quincy. The other significant project that I would like you to consider ARPA funding for would be phase 2 of the 21st Street transmission main improvement, and this would go from Washburn to Oakley. We currently have in design the project to go with a 24-inch transmission main from Washburn to Western, where I have a pump station. Phase 2 is from Washburn to Oakley. That's where my 42-inch transmission main is. This would help overall with my transmission in terms of allowing water to move from the central zone. Basically, it comes out of the water treatment plant in that 42, and then will be pushed over to 19th and Western, where it is then boosted and pushed to get over into the southeast zone. Then the other ask would be the private lead service line replacement that we're going to have to do to comply with the lead and copper rule revisions. We have just an earmark of $2 million. We've identified a couple hundred lead service lines right now. We've tasked staff, once this came out a couple of years ago that the EPA was doing this, we tasked staff with starting the inventory that were being required under lead and copper rules. Unfortunately, we have about 5,000 unknown lead service lines on the city side, and we have about 10,000 unknown lines on the private side. The EPA says if they're unknown, you have to treat them as lead. We also have a lot of galvanized lines. The EPA's regulations say a galvanized line downstream of a lead line or a lead pigtail has to be treated as lead. So we've got a tremendous amount of potential exposure out there. $2 million truly is just the starting point. On the consent agenda tonight was the consulting contract with B&V to actually help get us boosted into this, review what we've done so far, help us come up with the testing plans that are going to be required under the new regs, the corrosion control analysis. At some point in the future, I'll do a little brief presentation to you in terms of the tremendous amount of requirements that are being imposed upon us under the lead and copper rule. So that really is the pared down list of water projects. I had a long list of other projects, and then I got the $20 million Polk Quincy, which forced me to go back in and do a hard look in terms of what needed to be pared down. On the sanitary side, the big one is sanitary. It's about $14 million necessary to relocate sanitary sewer lines to avoid conflicts with the Polk Quincy Viaduct. In addition to that, the only other project that I would throw out for your consideration would be half of a benefit district project for the Shadywood area. It's basically, there are 13 homes that are along the Shunga Creek, many of which their septic systems are getting to a point where they're about to fail. There's a huge benefit to me to getting homes off of septic tanks that are immediately adjacent to a creek. And so when the neighborhood was the one, some neighbors came to us and said, would the city be willing to partner with us if we were going to do a benefit district project? My response was, if we can get ARPA funding, I think city coming in with 50%, if you guys are willing to do the other 50%. So that was the genesis of that. So on the storm side, my storm, I had a long list of tremendous projects generated from the H&H studies, but once I learned that we have $5.6 million of stormwater relocation necessary for Polk Quincy, that pared that down. Then the last remaining item that I have is to use SCADA funds to fund for a 5-year period the managed defense system that protects the SCADA system as well as the city's enterprise system. As you are aware, there have been ongoing attacks on municipalities and businesses by cyber terrorists with ransomware. Our managed defense system that currently utilities and IT is paying for gives us a tremendous amount of protection. I'm sure Mark will indicate that it's why he sleeps better at night now. So that would be my last ask. So with that, I'll gladly stand for any questions. Again, I'm the utilities director. All I'm doing is making recommendations in terms of potential projects for ARPA. I completely understand that it's your total discretion.
Councilman Duncan, then Councilman Emerson.
Let's back up a little, because I am pretty sure this is the first time we have had a public announcement of the fact that what we thought was going to be a $6 to $7 million expenditure on utilities is now a $20 to $21 million expenditure on Polk Quincy. Not a fault of yours, I'm just stating for the record. I believe this is the first, so I have questions, and I don't know who wants to answer them, but I have some questions about that since we've now brought that up this evening. I guess the first question is, will we get any sort of breakdown of what those new costs are or differences? Because today, we've seen no information as to why that cost has ballooned.
Okay, so the initial cost was truly a WAG that the city manager and I said, we just threw out 1.5 million for storm, water, and sanitary and said, we need to put something out there. And then after we put that WAG together, I engaged a consultant and said, I need high-level planning costs in terms of what it's going to actually cost and what the impact is going to be. I received those a couple of weeks ago. I'm happy to provide those to the city manager, and he can share those with the governing body in terms of what those high-level costs are, in terms of how many lineal feet of water line, sanitary line, storm line, along with the estimated project budgets that we do have a pretty healthy contingency on, given the fact that we still have a lot more design and exploration to do, and the supply chain demands that we have right now in terms of the impact on just public improvement projects.
So the first numbers we got when we approved that project were a guess. We used no...
Actually, as it relates to the utility costs, we did not have an idea of what those utility costs were. We never presented that to the governing body at all. We knew that there were utilities in the right-of-way, but we had no idea that any of the expense would be that great until the project plans were released, and then we took those in order to be able to pursue figuring out what our utility costs would be.
But we built something in for those costs.
Not directly, no.
No, the only, let me clarify, the only estimate that was ever put out there was to have a placeholder in the city manager's ARPA list in terms of his recommended ARPA fund use. That was the pure amount. There was
I'm not talking about the ARPA. I'm talking about the original Polk Quincy project.
Right.
When we talked about utility costs.
We did not plan for any utility costs as it relates to that.
None. In that
Right.
$20 million number?
We had that $20 million number, when we initially talked to KDOT, there was not any consideration that we would be able to use any of those for utilities. That $20 million number relates to the road construction part of the project. So we would have...
Well, I apologize to the citizens for not asking better questions, and holy crap. I mean, with respect, this is a huge number. And the fact that we didn't talk to some people, take a look at that, do a better job of coming up with an estimate, and now being told we've got to suddenly come up with $20 million extra, making this from a $20 million project for us to a possibly $40 million plus project. Boy, that's a lot to figure out. And so I may not be directed at anyone except me trying to digest what the heck we do now with that and where we go from here. But definitely, I'll take some of that, should ask better questions, but we got to do better on these projects. We just have to, because using ARPA money for that now really restricts us, if that's even a consideration. My second question then would be, are these just all our utilities that we're paying for to move?
Yes.
Just stormwater,
wastewater.
Wastewater. Okay, so there's no one else who can foot any of the bill on this?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dobler is interested in responding. Is that okay with you? Okay.
Actually, I guess I'm confused. You started your presentation by saying KDOT is now going to pay for the relocation of the utilities that are within city right-of-way or city easements?
No, I apologize if I misspoke. KDOT is not going to pay for relocation of city utilities in the easements. That is not KDOT's position. KDOT's position is the primary use of that right-of-way is for free flow and passage of pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Any subsidiary use is secondary, and the secondary user would need to bear the cost of that. What KDOT is saying is that they will allow for any of the relocation of city utilities that are currently in city right-of-way to apply that cost towards the $20 million matching share that the city needs to contribute towards this project.
Okay, so I'm really slow because it's kind of late, but we were going to pay $20 million, right?
Correct.
And now KDOT says we can take the utility relocations, assuming they're in city right away, I get that. out of the $20 million.
Correct.
So the
That's
total
the-
tab is not $40 million, it's,
20 million, sir.
thank you.
It's still within the 20, yet we were going to spend our ARPA money on something else, and we were hoping to get some grant money to cover the 20. So there's still some conversation to have. Correct. We just need to, people like me have been saying, what about, and I didn't know about the utilities, but the cost of rerouting our streets and all that kind of stuff is on us too, and a lot of things that we needed to have quantified. Continue and.
I honestly don't understand that answer. What then do we need to, if we already are if we've already said as a governing body, we're going to spend the $20 million, whether it's bonding, whatever that process was, what is it you're recommending instead of doing it through the other mechanism we were going to use, we use ARPA funds to cover that 20? Because the answer we just got was this is only going to cost us $20 million no matter what. So what, I don't understand. I'm very confused.
So $20 million was our commitment when we signed the agreement, or when we had our discussion regarding what our agreement was going to be with KDOT. And that money was, at the time, it was intended to be used in order to support road network that's going to be needed for detouring, the improvement of that road network in order to be able to be prepared for when the project begins. The other, and then whatever was left, that was also a commitment. The utilities were something not part of that, and so therefore that was another additional item we were going to have. We knew there would be some utility expense as it relates to that. What we did not expect was that with the design where it's at, we would have to do some major relocation. That was not known to us. So we knew there would be some expense, but we didn't know that it was going to be this much because of when the design was completed. That exposed that need. What we're looking at is the opportunity that if it's desired, rather than spending GO bond as it was originally planned on the 20 million, you could look at the opportunity to use ARPA dollars if that's what you desire. Now, we can still utilize the $20 million for GO bonding and not use ARPA money for that. It's now that instead of, say, the road improvements are 10 million, instead of paying 10 million to the state as part of that commitment, we could use that 10 million to pay for a portion of the utility expense. Whereas before, previously, that was not an option. They've softened their position to allow us to utilize that funding for the need, since it is so large in the area of utilities. So that's the change that's occurred. We're now going to be able to use that GO bonding if desired. We could decide not to spend that GO bonding and use all ARPA money for that because of the revenue loss and the ability to do utilities. So what we have, what you have, is an opportunity now that you did not have to help cover these costs in two different ways and make a decision as to which way you believe to be the best for the community.
That's a little more of a straight answer. We're getting there. Thank you.
And maybe just to, Neil, I don't want to inappropriately put you on the spot, but the discussion when this whole thing started was that the 20 million, that there are grants that can't be applied for way far in advance, but that we hope to offset a substantial chunk, if not all of that 20 million, with some grant money. So Neil, city manager?
I can cover just a little bit, and then obviously Neil has some obvious expertise there. We will be applying for an INFA grant, and that INFA grant application was put on hold based on the timing of the project. We have prepared, and it's probably about 80% complete, a $100 million grant application for this project. Now, what that ends up doing is basically supplanting money that the state will spend on this project. And it is a grant that we have to apply for at our level. And so we're prepared to do that. But with the timing, the project starting construction did not meet with the time window of the grant application. So if we'd applied this year, we would not have been able to start, they are not going, the state would not have been able to start the project in the timeline required of the grant. So the state asked us to delay that application by 1 year. We still intend to apply for a $100 million INFA grant. In addition, the new IIJA grant program has put a whole bunch more money into what amounts to the same program. And so I think this project also allows us the opportunity to go after that funding that'll be there because of the new federal infrastructure project grant. I miss anything, Neil?
No, I think that covers it, and really it boils down to whether we fund $20 million worth of this project, which includes building highways, and moving water lines, and all kinds of stuff, whether we fund $20 million of that with geo-bonded money, or we use ARPA money and don't incur the geo-bonding expenses. Seems pretty simple to me. Thank you.
Councilman Emerson.
So, thank you, Chair. I have two questions then. Are we not even considering, this is ARPA money, but we're not considering the infrastructure, additional infrastructure money that's going to be coming down the pike?
The
Sorry.
infrastructure grant funding that was approved, the IIJA program, is going to provide funding. Most of that, from what we can tell from initial webinars that staff and myself have looked at, from experts that are looking through the bill, most of that funding is going to come to the state and then being reissued out as grants. Or you apply directly to the federal government to receive that funding through their normal grant programs. Most of their grant programs that already existed really just ended up receiving additional funding than they normally would get in a normal budget year. And so many programs that have been there for a while will now be there with additional funding to them, so they'll be able to issue more grants than they would in a normal year.
Is that the 100 million that you're talking about? Would that be IGAA money possibly?
Right. The federal government has had that program, and they put out a notice of funding opportunity each year, and then you can apply, and they have a few $100 million that they give out to various projects across the country. And so that is something that I still think our project is very qualified for, and with the additional funding, I think it even gives us an even greater chance. The one thing that I need to remember, though, is even if we do not receive the infra grant, the $100 million grant, the state is still committed to funding this project. The $100 million grant, because we have a good project and we could potentially get that funding, then allows the state to be able to do other projects with the $100 million that they would have used on our project. And so that's why we pursue it, to have an opportunity to get that funding.
Okay, I think I understand that. So, but Braxton, the bottom line on what you're asking for utilities right now with this presentation that you're doing totals how much?
It's approximately 30 million is what the list that I just went through, of which, to me, the highest priority is the unfunded mandate by KDOT to relocate the utilities, the water, sanitary, and storm, which totals approximately 21.5 million.
So what we're looking at is you're asking for about 30 million, give or take. 21.5 million would be towards the KDOT project and the moving
Yes, ma'am.
of the water and sewer water and all of that. So that would be 20 million that we were committed. We can use all of that for this. And then maybe pay out a little extra. So again, the simple way that Neil explains it is that it would just be GeoBond decision, ARPA decision, not a whole bunch of 40 extra. Because initially I thought exactly what you were saying. That's the way it sounded to me. Okay, I understand it now. Thank you.
It is still an extra 20 million, no matter how you look at it,
Okay,
unless
well,
somebody else
Correct.
pays for it.
Then how
It
is
actually could
that?
end up being less.
Can you
than
please explain that?
extra
How
20
is it an
million.
extra
No.
20 million?
Because when the Polk Quincy project was put together and the dollars were put into it and there was a negotiation that the city would cover 20 million of it, the utilities were not in that total. and they were not in the total of things we were going to spend our ARPA money for either. So it's an extra 20 million, no matter how you look at it, unless we get the grants that we thought of at first, or somebody else through negotiation or whatever pays for it.
But Chair, but to the extent that we get credit for what we're spending, it's money we'd have to spend anyway. I mean, we were going to have to give them 20 million. Well, if we spend 20 million or 18 million of this, say, is reimbursable because it's in the city right away, that means really all we're doing is spending 2 extra million, more than we would.
We should.
So in other words, if you're getting credit for what you're doing here with the state, we were going to have to give them 20 million, or we can spend 20 million to get our own utilities fixed up. And by the way, I'll tell you, I've done a lot of work in this area. This is some of the oldest stuff in Topeka. We were going to have to be redoing this stuff eventually anyway. I mean, I hope KDOT doesn't know that, but.
The thing I worried about when we heard about it, we're not going to have to move the stuff that you just put in, are we?
No. Matter of fact, that was a consideration, and they very specifically looked at that, and they knew enough of the alignment. Well, I know that we discussed that at the time.
I do need to make one correction there, Councilmember Emerson, is that we will have street improvements that have to be made to improve our streets with the expected extra traffic on some of the routes in our community, such as Southeast 6th Street. We expect to receive additional traffic, McVicker. There's some road improvements that we're going to need to make there in order for that to withstand the additional traffic that they would not normally see because of the viaduct being closed for over a year when it's actually dropped until it's rebuilt.
But any work we do to improve our streets or our infrastructure is not wasted money.
No.
We have new infrastructure. I mean, I don't know if any of you have driven in those roads around that area, but it's not going to hurt to spend some money on them.
Right, and that was an additional bonus of doing that work and being
Yeah, so
able
it's
to
not
take
like
credit
waste,
for that.
it's not wasted money, I guess is my point.
It's part of our training.
And Councilman Duncan, I share your frustration that when you think something's going to be 5 million or something, then it becomes 20. But to me, the headline there was that KDOT is going to let us offset these costs, count those as our local match of our 20 million. So to me, that is huge. And again, not a perfect deal, but pretty good deal.
No, and I agree with you, Councilman Anderson, and I continue to be supportive of this project. I guess my biggest frustration is half of this confusion, we've got to do better on it. We should have foreseen utilities movement and had that conversation of, that is not included in this, everybody. We're going to try to figure out what that is. We know it's a moving target. And so then when we get to this point, that becomes part of the confusion of, well, we didn't include utilities. So in the future, we just need to be more, I think, aware of those conversations, and for me personally, asking those questions of, have we included utilities movement in this project? And if not, so that I'm not caught off guard at these moments and say, what are you talking about? So that's why I said I take some of that on myself of asking better questions, but just, and same with, we will have additional costs now with roads, and that's fine. Again, you're right, we have to repair those. I'm not against that. I just think if we don't show that we have when we move that target, it makes it look like we're not understanding of all those pieces. And I know we are. I know that our staff is aware of that. It's just getting it a little more comprehensive put together for us when we do it, so that the citizens aren't caught off guard. I mean, we've had another project that's costing us millions of dollars more again, and so these pile up, and I want to make sure we're just on top of those things. So that's it. Thank you very much.
And Chair, thank you. And actually, not to take the spotlight off Polk Quincy, but we talked about the lead lines, and I guess had a question, Mr. Copley. We're not responsible for doing the private side, are we? Private side of the lines, replacing those?
The way the regulations are written is that if we do a project where we're going to be disturbing someone that has a private lead service line, and let's say, for example, we have a city lead service line and we replace ours, we have to provide them with the opportunity that we will replace their lead service line for them, but their responsibility is to pay for it.
Okay.
So in my mind, having ARPA is a huge tool in terms of social equity to be able to provide a means of funding, because a lot of these lead service lines are in older, poorer parts of town, and the people don't have an extra $10,000 to be able to pay to repair replace a lead service line.
Okay, thank you for that. And just to follow up, I noticed there's a little parenthesis at the end of your thing. It says, that money, the lead service line removal will be removed if funded by the infrastructure bill. And isn't there money allocated in the infrastructure bill for this specific?
Yeah, that was what I was going to do. Mention that at this point, from what Braxton and I are hearing, it looks like the infrastructure bill will provide additional funding to each state that will go through the water revolving loan fund, where the city would be able to borrow the money from them, but 50% of it, whatever we would borrow, would be forgiven. So we would have so if we needed to borrow $5 million, $2.5 million of it would be forgiven with the way the program's been written at this point. That's what we can tell so far. And so we may have an interest in pursuing that when it comes available, but it is something we still need to have more definition to as to what the actual.
Potentially this $2 million could fund $4 million worth
Exactly.
of. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Clarification just in general. When, let's say 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about using the ARPA money for utilities, I thought that the idea was that maybe not exclusively, but that overall what we would be doing is using ARPA money instead of borrowing revenue bonds to do projects that were already on deck, that were priorities, and therefore that could help us get our debt load down, which would free up more money annually after that, by doing projects that we already had in mind, already we're challenging the rate structure that we have to kind of keep our utility rates down as much as possible and get current projects. So if we, with this new consideration, and hats off to you for negotiating with KDOT for sure about the Polk Quincy project, one way or another, seeing what we can do about that share. But if we switch out what we had talked about 2 weeks ago and before that to using this money for Polk Quincy, then we won't have that savings and that cash, if you will, support for those other projects.
Correct. There are a lot of very hard decisions that need to be made because you have a limited amount of funding and we have a exponentially growing need.
Well, I think clearly with this group moving, try and speak for the group, but moving toward a deep discussion and hopefully some decision-making starting in January, being able to pencil out these alternatives for us so we can, knowing a little more about Polk Quincy and being able to pencil these out so we can make the best possible decision. Was your $30 million total simply because this proposal that's been given to us so far has always has been capped internally at about 30 million for utilities?
Discussions with the city manager of, I think it's somewhere in excess of $40 million total, and knowing the needs that we have on utility side, it was come up with a list of approximately 30 million for me. Obviously, it is a recommendation. It's your decision ultimately in terms of where you go on which of any of these you would include for ARPA.
And that you could easily give us 200 million.
Easily.
Or whatever. Thank you. Yes.
I think it might help to talk a little bit about schedule, because this money doesn't have to be allocated till when?
December 31 of 2024 is when it has to be allocated by.
And this project, the Polk Quincy project, does not start, utility relocations are probably 23, 24.
I understood 2023.
And the city's applying for the infra grant when?
We will be applying in next calendar year. So in 2022, we will apply for the infra grant. You have to begin construction within 3 years of receiving funding.
You'll find out about that in 2022?
Yes.
So really, if you think about the chicken and the egg, if we apply for the grant, find out towards the end of 2022 that we get 100 million or 20 million, then that allows those other decisions to be made, and we have time to make them. So it's not like we have to do all of this next week or next month. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're all glad you understand that. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. So you're talking about the ARPA.
Yes.
Okay. And I think, I just really say thank you for saying that. You have a way of explaining things when we agree that are very succinct. And I just have to say, that's exactly what folks need to hear, Neil. I mean, council person, Neil. I mean, they need to hear that, because I think we all, I, for one, want to just be able to give the information, not of who's going to get what, but the process, right? So we can let folks know, bide your time, it's going to be a process. So when we have the spreadsheet, like we had that comes out, which I am not in agreement of it being in a public, in an open document like this, because to me, it just speaks to things that even though the city manager feels like it's the right thing to do, to me, it just pushes it out quickly instead of having a more deliberate, intentional process, which is what it feels to me like you are saying right now. This is not about rushing. This is about intention and moving it, because there's so much money moving around. And so I just think that that line of communication that you had right now was really good, because it set my mind at ease on how this is going to go. And if we can set some of, our minds at ease, and I'm sure not just me, then I think, what that can do for folks that are out there really wondering, how can I get a chunk of this, or maybe I'm not going to be able to get a chunk of it, or whatever, or what are they doing? That just gives answers that are very good. So thank you for that.
On the other hand, for infrastructure projects, they need to be budgeted years out. Our staff needs to be able to put them into the CIP, and as we see, it often takes 2 or 3 years to get a project ready to go. So I think what I heard was that we still need to come up with like an A-list plan. And then if we can get grant money to offset some of those, we know what we're going to backfill. That what I heard? Substitute, let's say, if we didn't need the money for that purpose?
Sorry, I didn't quite follow that. Say that again.
Well, you do it more simply than I do, obviously.
Simple is
Well,
good.
if what you were saying is if we set up a plan for ARPA, and then it turns out we get a grant that can offset needing to use ARPA for that purpose, then if we've got a B list of alternates that we could spend that money for, if we
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. So Braxton, if there was no Poke Quincy, would be coming up with a list of utilities that need to be replaced, and you can still do that. And if we get other alternative funding for Poke Quincy, and then we fulfill that list. And if there's other, I think going back to what Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala said, there's a lot of chunks to be had out there. You're not getting your chunk in January, whether it's utilities or anybody else. It may be next January, but we've got time, so let's not push.
Councilwoman.
And just one more point about that is that I would hope that because there is so much money moving, right? This first about this $100 million grant, that was really good information. And I know not everybody watches city council meetings, but, hopefully the media will help in getting out this message of what we're saying right now, what this dialogue is right now, which has been important to have. Slow it, and I would include myself in that process. Deliberate, lots of money going out there. But again, we're getting it out so that folks can hear it. So hopefully the media will help in that as well. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. City Manager, is this the last of the presentations that you had planned
Yes.
for us? And is this item scheduled to be on any of the other December agendas?
No, not at this point. We, I think, have covered it, and the instructions, this should have been, without the other agenda and technical issues we had covered in November. Unless it's requested that we have a discussion in December, my instructions had been from the governing body that you were going to prepare for January meetings. What I will do, though, and I mentioned it in an email tonight, this evening, to the governing body, is that I will create just a list, not priority or anything. Anybody that sends something in to me asking to be funded with ARPA, it'll just be a list of those projects that people are asking for money for, so that you're made aware of them. And then I will have in my file that can be shared by staff in the future, when you have your meetings in January, the actual letter of request that was received regarding that item, so that if you want to consider it, you'll have the narrative from them when they made that request. And that can go to Ms. Pederzini's request that she made related to some stormwater work in her neighborhood. I've had requests from Jump for money for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So those types of things will be put in a list and provided to you, and then that way you're aware of it, and I'll update it whenever, if I get any more requests.
Thank you for that. I will share with all of you that because there wasn't, the specifics weren't on there, and I was expecting to chair this meeting, I did confer with Mayor-elect Padilla about what we should do with this agenda item this evening, because I didn't know we had a presentation. I mean, if there is, we talked at first about targeting for January, but no date was ever set. I think there was a general thought that it'd be this half-day work session, but if we did that, we might have wanted to plan exactly what we were going to cover in advance. We've not done that. If you want to talk about that a little bit this evening, otherwise, just to clarify, I guess, for everyone concerned, if we don't settle on what we want staff to do to set up a special meeting, which was what I recall as the discussion, then we're going to end up just talking about this in a council meeting in January and setting something up and later. I don't know if you want the staff to go ahead with what was discussed months ago about setting up a Saturday meeting in January, or whether it needs more planning than that. Any?
Well, I guess I had always been under the impression when we established that the point was to pull it out of a regular meeting. I believe Councilman Lesser at the time also said his thought was, let's take, that way we can dedicate a few hours if we think it needs to be, and start with, you might want to save this as a ringtone, where Councilwoman Valdivia is right, so you can put that on your phone later. Spencer said it. I think step one is going to be part of that discussion. Well, what are our parameters going to be, so that we know that, and so that the community knows that these are the criteria we're going to set. And I think the thought was, at least for that may take longer than along with 12 other agenda items. So I guess I'm still, whether it's January, February, whatever, in that first 60 days of the new session, we have our new member setting that meeting up to hash all that out, so then we can move forward. I would still be supportive of doing that in its own workshop.
A special meeting. Councilman Dobler?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think maybe our perception a couple of months ago was we were going to be getting together in January to talk about specifics. I think now we're going to be talking, you call it parameters, you've called it process. Forget about how much even or who. Let's figure out what the process is going to be. And that makes the most sense to me, and we should do it in January.
We do need to get started. Well, is there a consensus then that we ask staff to find a Saturday morning in January and just do 4 hours and get really good donuts?
Pretty sure there is a Saturday morning.
There might be. Well, we'll just have Liz get hold of everybody and work out a date, hopefully that everyone can come.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you'll be late, right? Okay. We do have one conferee on this issue. Two conferees? Two, actually. Joe Ledbetter, did you still want to visit about this issue? Yeah, I got it. Got it right here.
The board and governing body, specifically talking about the ARPA funding. I've been asking a lot of questions about these utility projects for, well, it's going back several months now. that anytime there's a water line replacement, I want to see the number of feet. I want to see actual dimensions of the pipe so that we actually have transparency about these projects and their cost. I too was surprised by the 21.5 million. I knew there was about 5 million a few months back. I don't know exactly when I was told that, but it is a big difference. And but the best part about it, I know I talked to, I think, the chief about this a few weeks ago. I said, maybe the state will give us some kind of credit because of that huge amount. Now, I don't know if he recalls that, but I know that when you get hit with that big of an amount as a local entity, they're probably going to work with you, especially when they've got large ending balances coming in every month like they are now with sales tax. And I mean, they're raking in a lot of revenue right now. So there's a little more room for them to work with local entities as well. But let's say we just get a trade-off, then we don't have to spend the money on the bonds, or you can make a different decision and you can use that ARPA money for something else. But we do need to make sure this is covered either way. And then I don't know if there's any other contingencies we didn't think of, but hopefully they're covering all the right-of-way and all the road expenses and all the other things. One of the things that troubles me with this original list that's online is there's a number of utility projects that are water line replacements. Now, if you'll recall, some of you weren't elected yet, but I was here in a very long discussion about we were raising water rates 7.5% a year for the next several years. And we were going to do that specifically for water line replacements. Okay, so I've been doing the math, and I just did the math on this list down here of these proposals that had been proposed. Vila West, Mound View Street, and Montera. All of these, fortunately, now have links of the pipes being replaced, so I can calculate this, okay? That's 2.5 miles. Guess what we were told in a note that came from the utilities director in December of last year was that with this rate increase, we can now replace, I did the math, 6 miles a year of water lines. So even though tonight, it's still on this list that the managers generated. Even though tonight it's not mentioned, why are these projects not already being paid for? I'm talking about these specific ones, the water line replacements. And then there's $2 million up here for the 21st Street, that's a water line. And that's going to connect with that great big pipe that they dug in 2005. I remember because I just bought a house over there on Oakley, and I had to go across that moat to get in, and it was a huge water line, 42 inches, is that correct? Do you remember that, Neil? I think you were interim manager. It was big, yeah, because I made sure I didn't fall in it because at night moving furniture. I said, my God, nobody will find me, but anyway. So yeah, I had to build a bridge across that. So could I have one more minute just to sum up my thoughts?
Moved and seconded. Another minute for Mr. Ledbetter.
Sure.
Any objections? Okay.
Thank you.
Proceed.
So as I see these water line projects, I'm going to start talking about them. I'm going to continue to talk about them a lot. Why is this money being taken out of our billing every month? 7.5%. Now we're going to get another 7.5% in January 1. And I'm not seeing the water line replacements. I'm seeing, I think, about a 1.5 miles replaced if you really project it out to the generously for this last year. Well, this is that first year. But even before that, when I looked back at CIPs, they were always telling us, oh, we're going to replace 3 miles a year, 3 miles a year. That was before the last round of water rate increases, because that one, they had done a 4% increase. 3 years before that, and I said, yeah, we can at least do 3 miles of water line replacements a year. And eventually we'd have these problems solved with these water breaks. But the work's not getting done, folks. So that's why I brought that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Lozone Grays?
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully it'll get warmer outside. The last time I was here, or last record of the ARPA recommendations was dated October 19th. And since then, the infrastructure bill had been passed and signed. And so these recommendations were made before that was passed. And I would have never known if it was going to get passed. It's like, I'm not sure if anything's going to get passed in Washington, D.C. But within that I looked at it, and there was the lead service line, water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, storm sewer infrastructure, specifically infrastructure. And as already been mentioned with the passage of the infrastructure bill, that you're going to probably have access to more than this amount of money just to do infrastructure work. So I calculated what was here, and that was around $27 million in infrastructure work. And so then I looked at the same list here, or the new list, and I still see the same infrastructure with some changing of the numbers. And also on there was not funded, but eligible for funding. There was a few items, and one was the small business assistance, and then there was the lead paint remediation. And so I had submitted earlier, before maybe around October, some recommendations of what ARPA funds should be spent for. Part of that was the broadband digital literacy program, and some other things. And I just don't have a lot of time, to speak to this. But I believe, and I'm going to revise the recommendations that I sent, on some things that the ARPA funds should be used to be spending on, because this is a once-in-a-moment opportunity for us to spend those monies on. That the infrastructure monies can be used and then some on these infrastructure projects. But there isn't going to be any ability of using any infrastructure monies on any small business assistance, which ARPA funds isn't allowable use. And so part of my recommendation, my revised recommendation, I'm just sort of going to go off my head, that if you can see this $27 million of infrastructure, I have a list of about $9,150,000, that I believe can be utilized from that $27 million, because you're going to be getting the monies from the infrastructure bill anyway. And part of that would be to make sure that monies are going to be there for small businesses over the next 4 or 5 years, that they will be able to have access to some grants or loans. Because we do not know where the variant is going to be. Small businesses are still suffering. They do have needs in different things. And so I'm pretty sure that over 4 or 5 years, there will be enough small businesses that can utilize that to help support their businesses. And there were some other areas there that lead paint remediation, the lead abatement of homes, which is allowable but not being recommended for funding. Topeka has a lead paint problem in their homes, and lead lines is not the only one. And there were some other things, I believe, as a recommendation. I know the city manager had mentioned that you can get an organization, if they want some funds, they can send a list of what they would want. I believe that let's take job training, for example. There's already been groups identified, and I would like to request a few minutes more. That's fine.
I'll move 2 minutes.
Moved and seconded. Any objection? 2 more minutes? Proceed.
Thank you. Job training is just really a line item. But on the other side, it has the designated entities of what that's going to do, or who that may be. I firmly believe in the interest of open, fair, and competitive bidding, that no group is specifically identified, but job training as a line item says there's $1.7 million or $750,000 that's going to be available, and that these organizations or groups would be able to apply for the funds. Now, if you were to take $9 million from the infrastructure, you could probably fund all of those of the above and then some of those others. But as it stands right now, the monies are just earmarked to specific organizations, entities, and programs, which really slaps in the face of what open, fair, and competitive bidding is all about. And so I have some recommendations. I mean, I believe that there was a recommendation of $200,000 for the digital portion. I think that should be $600,000. That there should be a specific amount for community violence intervention, because a lot of people don't know what that is. And there's other programs and organizations out there that have something that they should be able to apply. I mentioned the last time that there should be some type of a request for proposal process, fair, open, competitive bidding process, so these other organizations would be able to submit unique programs, because I can't see really where there's an equity lens in water, sewer, in the groups that are making the decision. And I just don't want a few people that is not truly a voice for the whole community making all of the recommendations for you all to be considering. And then in the job training, you know, Washburn Tech can't do it all, but there are some other things that should be done. So I'm going to submit eventually another set of revised recommendations for that there, and I would like to consider that $9 million from that $27 million be part of what's going to be utilized for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we wrap this up, I do know, and Lazone talked about that a little bit, that we decided we didn't want to invite people to turn in specific proposals, dollars and cents and names and so on, until we had come up with our master plan. But if, I don't want to overstep it, but if what city manager is offering is to take any recommendations that anybody sends in and get them compiled through the city manager's office so they're ready for us when we meet in January, would that help to have our pool together anyway of people's ideas, or?
Well, it's really, what I'll say is I'm doing it as a conduit. You know, for
Right.
me, all it is that no different than if a citizen wrote a letter to me that was addressed to you, they could just as easily, other than just submitting it to me, their idea, they could submit it to all of you, and you would then receive it. So all I'm doing is being a conduit and putting it in a folder so that when it comes time for you to have those discussions, you'll be aware of what's been previously submitted. And then when you submit, when you develop your process and procedures that you're going to follow, they'll all need to submit again. It's simply,
Sure.
Because you'll then determine what that is, and they'll have to follow that procedure in order to be considered.
Councilwoman?
Thank you, Chair. That's exactly what I was going to recommend, is that, yeah, people can go ahead and let us know that that projects are important to them, that they would like them to be prioritized, but that we have talked about, we're going to make the process
Right.
in January. So I think it's fine that people go ahead and submit
Ideas.
knowing that there will be a formal process that we need to solidify. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Chair. This train has already started rolling down the tracks as far as with people asking and all of that, even though we don't have a process in place yet. Again, as I stated, Neil's clarity lent a lot of insight into this. I don't think that we should stop this particular part, like, Councilwoman Nager is saying. At the same point, though, at the same time, I say, if we look at that spreadsheet, this can be mincing whatever, but the bottom line, it has funded and not funded. So that whole thing should just be taken off of there. I mean, you're going to be a conduit, then be a conduit and just put it all in there. The other thing that I want to say is I forwarded the information to you all about a number of articles that Lazone had recommended about how cities are dealing with the immense amount of funding that is coming in through ARPA, now through the infrastructure, et cetera. And there was one comment that I just want to leave, for us to have for consideration, and also for the public, because the public is a part of this process. And he stated that it has been recommended in these articles that he sent us, it has been recommended that cities set up a command center type of group because all of this federal money flooding cities. He went on to say, I think Topeka should do the same. It is recommended that there is to be a stakeholders with no conflicts of interest as a part of a community advisory group, since public administrators don't have all the answers, but their words, actions, and recommendations will have so much influence and impact affecting the future, not just a few years down the road. I really like the idea about that. I know it might be cumbersome to even think about that possibility for us to take on as we look at this money going down the road, but we also have to consider this is taxpayer money. We also have to consider we are a city, not only of elected officials, but of citizens who I think are more than, in many realms, able to also walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think that this is the kind of city that we would want to aspire to be, where we can have these different segments of our community come together to be able to give voice into these really important once-in-a-lifetime decisions. So, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Did you have something else? Okay. Well, at this time, it's a little bit after 8. We have 2 more agenda items. I don't know that either of them will be particularly long. We often do take a break at 8, and I'm getting a request for that break. So if people would like, seeing some nods, we'll go ahead and break for 10 minutes, come back and finish this agenda. It is our understanding that we have 2 executive sessions after that time, so we'll be here longer. All of you are welcome to take the break and come back and join us for the rest of the meeting. No snacks at all? Okay. Good.
It might be good, but you don't know. And you're going to have to apply for it, and you're going to have to win the grant.
All right, I think we're back live. It's time to get back to our agenda if we can. I think we're on item 6B, opioid settlement resolution.
B is discussion concerning the execution and delivery of necessary agreements to maximize the city of Topeka's allocation of the opioid settlement funds.
I'm going to turn this item over to our city attorney, Amanda.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. As some background knowledge, multiple class action suits were filed throughout the nation considering the negative effects of opioids. In the state of Kansas, the Kansas Attorney General joined in several class actions, as well as some cities and several counties joined in various class actions to sue opioid manufacturers, distributors, regarding some of the damaging effects to opioids in the community.
Can we hang on, excuse me, just a moment? Councilwoman Ortiz is waving. I'm not sure we're live.
Low volume.
Fixed? Can you hear now, Councilwoman? All right, thank you. Proceed. Sorry.
As these suits began to settle, it became quickly apparent that those settlement dollars that were going to flow to the state of Kansas would be maximized if it resolved all the claims, including local claims as well as state claims. So as a result of that, in December of 2020, the Kansas Attorney General began meeting with the League of Kansas Municipalities, the Association of Counties, trying to figure out ways to maximize that. During the 2021 legislative session, House Bill 2079 was the result of those conversations. House Bill 2079 did quite a bit of things. One, it created a pot for the state money to allow cities such as ours to apply for grants to mediate the effects of opioids. But probably more importantly for this conversation right now, it preempted local cities like the city of Topeka who had not yet filed litigation from filing any kind of litigation to help alleviate those claims. And a rare trade-off at the state level, they actually gave consideration for that preemption, which very rarely happens. And so in exchange for that preemption, they created a special pot of money from the state shares for 25% to automatically go down to cities and counties that had sued and waived their claims, or cities and counties like ours that had not litigated. So the city of Topeka is guaranteed a share of that money, provided that we do all the requirements in the House Bill 2079. So the biggest one of those is that as a city, a governing body, you need to pass a resolution certifying that we had at least $500 in expenses due to opioids. We can easily do that. The Chief of Police, Chief Wheelis, pulled together numbers from just the last 3 years and personnel costs to just respond to overdose calls, and we are at over $34,000 just from 3 years of overdose calls. That doesn't include municipal court costs, Narcan costs, lots of other costs that you could associate to opioids. So in order to protect our share, that resolution has to be passed by the end of 2021. Like lots of things at the state, it's been very slow rolling out the other details that will be required. The Attorney General and the League and the Association of Counties finished up the memorandum of understanding on how that money would flow down just this week. The portal is not yet open for us to submit the documents. There's probably more documents in the next coming days that the Attorney General will require us to sign to make sure that we get a portion of that money. So because it is almost the end of December and everything has to be signed by the 1st, this resolution also gives pretty broad authorization for the city manager, but also we're in the midst of that transition, so also the city attorney to sign and execute any kind of documents required by the Attorney General to protect the city's portion of that money. The exact amount is not known. The more cities that pass these resolutions that participate in the claim, the higher the state sum will be. The low ball estimate is if no other city besides us participated, it would be about $600,000. The high ball estimate is $1.2 million that could be flowed down to the city of Topeka. That money can be used to pay back costs that we've previously spent. It could also be used for grants for nonprofits to help alleviate the effects of substance abuse in our community. So that's why you have this resolution before you. If you chose not to pass it, the city would get $0. You choose to pass it, then it protects the share, and that amount will flow down over the next couple months or years.
Tough choice. Thank you. Do you have a question?
My question with this is obviously a discussion item, not an action item. Was the plan to bring it to us next week?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
is there a step we can take if we're good with it and pass it this evening?
I would love that. That would make me very happy.
Well, you're the city attorney, and you can tell us whether we can.
Yes, you could absolutely just vote on this now and pass it if you would like to.
Okay. Let's see if there are other, we did have a question over here, Councilman, I'm going to.
Sure, go ahead.
At one point, the city of Topeka did file a lawsuit. So if you could help us with.
Correct. We looked back through the past. Actually, while you retained an attorney to look at filing a lawsuit, nothing was ever filed, and we became a non-litigating city.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Ms. Stanley, I guess my question is there any advantage to passing this tonight?
There's no advantage. Well, the only advantage is that during the city manager transition, it's done, and we can get all the paperwork signed and submitted to the national settlement. But we can also do that next Wednesday after you pass it next Wednesday. Or Tuesday. Pass it on Tuesday. You have a meeting then.
I just get to sign my name earlier if you prove it
Because
tonight.
would we have to suspend the rules or anything like that in order to?
No, you would not need to suspend the rules.
There's not a suspension of the rules to just go forward on a discussion item and act on it?
You could just make a motion and move forward.
Okay. Are there any other questions, conversation about this? Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. This may be putting is it the cart before the horse? I think that's it. Okay, say we get this money, will the council be given information with all these different ways in which the money may be utilized on how it's going to be spent so we can see what the prioritization is?
Absolutely, and I would have given that to you tonight, but the Attorney General has not given it to us yet. So as soon as we get it from the Attorney General, we'll be happy to share it with you,
Okay.
Councilman, or
Thank
woman,
you.
sorry.
Thank you.
Well, and what this does is similar to the conversation we had before there was some discussion about a proposal in the ARPA list to use money that would have to do with drug-related counseling programs, crime prevention, and so on, where they could overlap as well, possibly, depending on when we know, whatever. Well, is there any, Councilman?
I mean, for the sake of doing that tonight, which we are going to do a week from now and not have to put it on the agenda, I would make a motion to just go ahead and approve, move to approve.
Yeah. We've got that second already here from Councilwoman Nager. Any further discussion, consideration? Let's vote.
Councilmember Emerson,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Pillar,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Next and last item is, whatever it is, let's see, 6C regarding public health and safety report.
C is discussion of final recommendations by the Public Health and Safety Committee on November 8, 2021 for 2 items.
So from the city staff standpoint, we've obviously been working very directly with Councilwoman Hiller, Councilwoman Valdivia Aquila, and Councilman Dobler on the committee to go through this information. So staff has, worked on this, and we feel very supportive that this is something that can make a difference. I know that we have some concerns about how it would be implemented and whether or not we can support what is being requested as we set these goals and priorities going forward. But I think that discussion has relieved some of those concerns that we had initially. And so we're very excited about this being a possibility that we can utilize and improve this community going forward.
Thank you. As committee chair, since I'm also chairing the meeting today, the plan was to hand off to Councilwoman Valdivia Aquila to do a brief presentation on this issue. What I will say is that we really want to key off how much information people want. This has been percolating for 18 months, and people have paperwork and have had information variously along the way. This is a final report out from the Public Health and Safety Committee. There are 2 main documents that are included in the packet for you. A master resolution, a recommendation, and then an initiatives resolution that would direct the city manager to direct staff to work on the initiatives. People decide to vote on them tonight, we'll figure it out real quick. But the thought was that if you were comfortable with both documents, we'd probably bring them forward next time. If there weren't any concerns, we'd bring them forward as just a single motion to adopt the recommendations of the committee, which were 3-0 on both of those documents. Or if there were concerns and people wanted to separate them, we could do that when we bring them back as separate issues next week. So with that procedural introduction, the expectation was that Councilwoman Valdivia Aquila would do a briefing on those 2 items, and also Community Engagement Manager Glaudet recently gave us an implementation plan for the initiatives, and we were going to call her up and let her just address you briefly. So with that, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. As stated, this is being introduced as a discussion item tonight. You all have been provided the attachments in your packets. The last time Karen and I had our initial conversation with the governing body was shortly before our citywide resident input on community ideas for changing the culture of our property maintenance initiative actually began. The Public Health and Safety Committee wants to thank all that showed up from the public, all that called, and all that emailed their suggestions. We had month-long, a total of 7 meetings, and during this time, and after we spent a great deal of time in dialogue also with code and community engagement, after, kind of to back up a little bit, after the series of public meetings that we had, community engagement was there at every single one. A big shout out of thank you to Monique and to Latoya and to city manager for running the PowerPoint presentations. And because it was really, these were kind of intense meetings where we were really spending a lot of time listening, but we came up with something like 26 pages of suggestions. So, you know, we just have a lot of information. What we have now at this point that we have whittled down with those 20-some pages is we have an 11-point initiatives draft. And you can see all of the detail that is listed there, and it really gets down into the weeds, literally and figuratively, with what an example, let's say from a policy perspective, if you look at the vegetation section, one of the things that we will be focusing on is to approve an ordinance, and this is hopefully will happen in January of 2022, approve an ordinance change and set the date for implementation and sync with forestry ordinance operations and billing that has to do with vegetation. Also to set administrative guidelines for phase-in for enforcement and for community and community-wide initiatives. This reinsertion of vegetation into code is a really big deal, and it is a very, what I believe is going to be a large part of this initiative overall, and I believe really be a help to our communities. In the procedure section, from these 11 initiatives, one you can also note would be number 8, neighborhood self-help model. Starting the first quarter of 2022 and throughout, community engagement staff is going to be integral in this process. They're going to seek guidance and partnerships for neighborhoods through national networks and models of training. Additionally, training for community engagement staff, highlight neighborhood and teams, perhaps even within neighborhoods that have been working hard together on strategies, perhaps making it a friendly competition or awards for such categories as best of or most improved to be recognized on the city's website and otherwise promoted. So again, if you just look through this, what you're seeing is that this is really a game changer in how we are going to be working with community, how we are going to be working with city staff, and those are just a couple of examples. Another exciting element is the collaboration with Go Topeka and helping us bring in Karen Black. Karen Black and her May 8 consulting company. And they're also, Go Topeka is also committing to help us with all the recognition efforts in a true community fashion. This also we can anticipate will be a game changer, where we will see Go Topeka, the city, and our neighbors working together to make our city better, and for Go Topeka to highlight and place emphasis on our neighborhoods that are at times forgotten. So there is that buy-in from them. Additionally, with the help of Karen Black, she will lead in the deep dive into all aspects of this initiative and provide a concrete plan as the shift of culture changes for the better. Please remember, Black has over 20 years in this realm, and along with her consulting firm, she teaches at the University of Pennsylvania in the Urban Studies Department and is a senior fellow at Drexel University Lindy Institute for Urban Innovation. So we're opening this up for discussion, and our hope is not to lose the momentum. We need the momentum to continue with the community, with Karen and I and Neil, and for everyone here on council along with staff to move fresh into this the first part of January and get moving on this game-changing initiative. And our goal would be that we can get this for a vote, I don't know tonight, but maybe by,
We thought next week, but
maybe,
whatever.
next week. So is there any questions?
Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the committee for doing this work, and thank you for the dedication that the staff and you two have shown with all of those meetings. And I'm very, very excited about all of this, especially with District 6 being such a residential area. This is extremely important to our neighborhoods. I know that there are several neighbors in District 6 that are very focused on being clear about vegetation because there's different pollinator gardens and stuff like that. Are those things that you ran into during your meetings, talking about being very specific about the types of vegetation and promoting maybe planting certain sorts of plants and getting noxious stuff out of the way as well?
We addressed both of those. There actually had been some incidents where there was some misunderstanding on the part of code compliance in terms of someone's tall yard, and that resulted in a full commitment from Shawnee County Extension to help us with training for the inspectors as well as for the community. And part of what is emerging as a change in policy, a lot of this is just community engagement and rollout, but on the policy side is to actually name some additional noxious plants that are not currently named. So, and in some cases, we've got tons of notes which you've seen, and we will sustain the website and continue adding to it throughout this whole, particularly next year as we work on this. But for instance, if that means that we, on a policy standpoint, need to look at what's missing, we may need to include that with the state legislative agenda, for instance, if they're missing from the state and it seems that it's appropriate statewide. There will need to be some specifics about accommodating pollinator gardens with enough of a definition, and people have done some work on that already. Actually, over at the police department, which is currently supervising code compliance, they've worked on that. And will even, for instance, where the city itself lets things grow wild in our stormwater collectors, we're going to have to identify who's exempt from that so that it's clear who's covered.
Excellent. I appreciate that for the environment and for keeping that out of my email. Thanks.
Should we bring up your bees now? Councilman.
Yeah, as Councilwoman Nager said, I also appreciate the tremendous amount of work that the committee did on this. And I came to one of those meetings, and it was a long meeting. So I really appreciate all the work you guys have done. I did have a question, though. It appears that, is your thought that if we adopt this next week, then some of these things are like ordinance changes and stuff, so next year there'd be a series of things that we would look at and adopt, is that?
Yes. In short, the of the 11, 4 of them are more policy oriented and 7 of them are more engagement oriented. Okay, let's figure out, for instance, we've lost an inmate crew. The idea of having a summer mowing program for summer jobs for kids and combining multiple agendas. The community engagement stuff may need some planning, but it can hit the ground right away in January so that if programs need to be in place, by the time the growing season starts, we're going to be ready in 2021 to get those rolling. For the policy things, as Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala mentioned, some of those can be, people have worked on them and we can do them right away so they're in place. But we are expecting that the engagement, both on the code compliance and if you think about it, there's procedures of when do we not even go out and just give somebody a warning? When do we do, how do we process that, which is going to take some additional input, though we have tons of notes, as she said. But that goes through the procedures of when does it go to an administrative hearing, when does it go to court. So there's going to be a lot of consideration, that being an example. So we are, that engagement right now, we're looking at probably January through June to do the fundamental research and so on. And right now, the way it's sitting is it includes some time to engage feedback at stages from citizens as well as from us and other stakeholders. So those would progressively take more time. Okay. But again, our code, our property maintenance code, for instance, is largely just fine. There weren't questions about that. We've got to figure out, we've got to do the crossover where forestry does certain things. Sure. So some technicals, but we're not expecting a whole lot of policy change. Hopefully, we can do it timely as it comes clear.
Thank you for that. But I guess as an example, though, like in vegetation, like Councilwoman Nair, just ask about, like, I see here, approve ordinance change and set date for implementation. So that would be something that comes back to the council?
Yes,
So that-
any policy would.
Okay.
Well, policy that is ours. If what we're doing is talking to the county about when they do their tax
Sure.
sales because we've got all these vacant properties sitting, then it would still come back to us as a report, but it would be going to the county. Or if we're going to the state to get more noxious weeds on the state legislature, the policy can happen at different levels.
Yeah, and just to clarify the reason for my question, people that have maybe those kind of pollinator gardens or rain garden or whatever, they would be apprised that this is going to come up and they could come here and know it's going to be considered and.
Exactly.
Great.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay.
Because, we've been in deep enough to know that you add all that in, and then you have to figure out what the unintended consequences could be.
Absolutely.
And try and cover for that. Councilman Dobler. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, you've been very polite to include me in this. I did absolutely no work.
He's the broadband guy, okay.
My fellow committee members have spent so much personal time on this, and it has taken a lot of time. As we think about growing our community, which we need to grow, there's lots of different elements. It's not just new subdivisions, it's getting people to town. And in order to do that, you have to have a town that is a pleasure to live in. And that's exactly where this is headed, taking parts of our, really any part of Topeka, you can find things that need to be addressed that will now, I think, be addressed in a fair fashion. So again, I commend both of you. This has been a great body of work, and look forward to seeing the individual elements of it be promulgated in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. Monique Laudet, do you want to come up and just share a few words with us?
Season's greetings, Madam Chair, governing body. So it's my pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of the Division of Community Engagement. We appreciate the opportunity to be involved in the beginning versus being involved in the middle or at the end. It was very informative to be able to be part of the conversation. Our role is to be the conduit between our partners, our neighbors, the community partners, and our the divisions and departments that we'll be working with. Madam Chair, did you provide this document to the governing body?
Not the one that you just turned in to us.
Okay, not the one that I just gave you last week? No.
Correct.
Okay.
Did not.
So if you don't mind, I will be very brief. I will just share with you, looking at the initiatives, looking from number 1 through 11, I'll share with you how our view that community engagement could be involved. Items 1 and 2, item 1, legal code, interpretation, policy, and procedures. That would definitely be, our involvement would be determined by the city attorney. On item 2 with vegetation, we're open to be able to be involved however it's deemed fit. And number 3, with community engagement, talking about training, small business, entrepreneurship, B, community-based, and C, public-private partners. After conversing with the city manager, it's been determined that we are unable to, we don't have the capacity to run a summer mowing program. And so our recommendation is that an RFP is provided for a nonprofit to be able to utilize the program. We will come up with the scope of work. We will help with all doing informational sessions throughout the community to ensure that it's fair and equitable, that all nonprofits have the opportunity to utilize the program if they so would like to see that's taking place. And then we will handle the invoicing process of it and making sure that the work is being done. We think that would be the best way to be able to do that. So that's our idea in regards to the training mechanism. We definitely would be able to assist with the adopt a neighborhood portion, assisting our neighborhood leaders, not doing the work for them, but assisting them with finding community partners that would like to partner with them for that program, as well as we will be assisting City 4 and property maintenance with whatever type of information needs to be sent out into the community. Looking at number 4 with the roundtable of rehabbers, Our goal there is to assist development services, ensuring once again that everything is fair and equitable and that we're getting the information out to the community and to those rehabbers that can come to the table. Number 5 was trash and dumping. We made a recommendation to the council members and to the committee that a partnership with Shawnee County Waste needs to take place and more in-depth conversation could be had there in regards to potential discounted dumping fees for neighborhood improvement associations. We also talked about a community dumping day, potentially that could be scheduled in 2022. Also identifying mental health programs, dealing with the issue of hoarding, and having a free dumping day or days within the calendar year of 2022. Item number 6 was education and community connections, and as Councilmember Valdivia Alca already alluded to, we were talking about looking at national training and some local board training as well, but definitely wanting to respect our neighborhood leaders, finding out what particular items they'd like to have some training on or those actual topics. Number 7 was retail parking, lots and trash. The Ombudsman Office will be more than happy to, whenever there is an issue, as we've had thus far, with anything that's taking place there, talking about illegal dumping or trash in the area, that I'll be more than happy to contact that owner. Preferably, I'd like to go have an in-person meeting, and if not, we could follow up with any type of documentation that's needed. The next, the neighborhood self-help model, again, alluding back to what Councilmember Valdivia Alca said, we're looking at training both nationally and locally. Number 9, the profile of various neighborhoods using promotions, and we offer that we definitely would partner with the Greater Topeka Partnership and help with whatever that event looks like, and we would help them either create the event or to get the word out, however we could be helpful there. Number 10, KDOT, other entities in regards to the trash removal. Our involvement would be determined, however it's deemed necessary. And lastly, on the vacant properties, we'll be more than happy to working with property maintenance, legal, and housing, however it's deemed necessary. I'll stand for any questions.
Councilman. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, Monique, the meeting that we had, and I know it's just so people know, it was exciting, it was invigorating, it was full of possibilities. Some of those we're going to be able to meet, you know, that the three of us had. Some of those we're going to get some hard knocks, I'm sure. But I think that all of us felt that this was something that we could really sink our teeth into with the commitment that we have for neighborhoods. So I really appreciate all of the extra and above work that you did by presenting us with everything that you felt that community engagement could do. So
I appreciate your kind words. Do you know, though, Council, that we are, at the community engagement, our mission is to be a bridge to the community, and that's what we're here to do. Regardless if someone's looking for something as minute as someone may think is dealing with, where they can find some assistance with something very minor to something at this level, we're here to be helpful. So glad to do it.
Well, and we wanted to invite you up today. Yours was the most recent feedback, but if you all think about it early on in this process, when we couldn't do our public hearings the summer of 2020, we ended up working with City Manager Trout, Mike Haugen, and Lieutenant Badel from the Police Department in terms of the code property maintenance unit's response and what they felt they could do, and worked out something mutually agreeable. Lieutenant Badel will be a lead, Monique Laudet will be a lead, and then Amanda Stanley, our city attorney, has already gotten diligently involved in looking at other states and working through her legal networks in these, the legal questions that we have as well. So we will have this, when you look at your paperwork, there are many stakeholder departments and others outside the city, but we'll have that core of 3 staff leads as a team working. We expect to keep this under the auspices of public health and safety for the next year. So think about it when you decide what committee you want to sign up for, right? Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to extend my thanks to you, Ms. Claudet, especially with the detail that you provided for really fleshing out these programs. It's very exciting to see that we not only got a lot of input, but that we have a lot of direction on where we can go and what is possible in the coming months. So thank you for that work.
You're most welcome.
And it's been very heartening to Councilwoman Valdivia and I think I can speak safely for both of us, to have not only that tremendous public response. We went out to those hearings saying, as we often do, you know, we want to ask the public because they've got experience with this and they've got ideas, and they did. when she talks about the 26-plus pages of stuff, that was things that we hadn't come up with before we went into the hearings. And then the staff has been so responsive with point, counterpoint, we can do this, what about that? When Monique came, when we met with her and we had the 11-point list, we had community engagement. City manager been worried about it. He said, you know, I don't know if they can do all that stuff. And we went through it with her and she's like, yep. And oh, you don't have us on this policy stuff, but we know a lot about that. You should put us on that too. And that was very heartening as well. We really appreciated it from everyone.
You're welcome.
So, well, you're right, I'm sorry. We have 2 signed up for public comment. Joseph Ledbetter. Thank you.
Thank you, board and governing body. I commented at 2 of these town meetings, and I've commented many times before this council over the last 6 years about my concerns about code enforcement or where it hasn't been in place. And by the way, I've emailed you my public comments. I'll be leaving during that time and save us all a little time there. And they're really good, so you'll want to read them. Thank you. It's about the way we run the meetings and our governance. My concern has always been, and it's been very focused and it hasn't deviated, I want the landlords to maintain their properties. I'm talking about commercial landlords as well. About 43% of our population lives in tenements. Now, that is a huge part of our local economy. We're talking massive amounts of dollars being paid in rents and rent roll that pays for those properties. Now, some of them are THA, so let's not leave them out. Some of them are Section 8 landlords that THA, has some governance over. So we do have other entities besides just the private sector that actually controls a lot of these properties. We have had study after study talking about how we are short $50 million of housing. We have this big gap that's not being met. Substandard housing. We have all these units of substandard housing. Okay? But if you actually dissect that, actually break it down into evidence and facts, what you have is most of that is landlord-owned property. They have the money to fix those properties. I've been, and I've seen photographs and looked at from public views some of these landlords' properties with 4-car garages, 5-car garages, actual almost palaces. One of them was taking huge amounts of money out of Highcrest West, and one of those tenements that I actually represented pro bono to get some problems solved with that property, the people had no heat for 4 years. What they'd done is they went out and got kerosene space heaters. This was a woman, a man, a woman married with a 5-year-old child. So that kid had grown up in that environment. And he did not want to replace the furnace. This was just one of his 90 units in Highcrest West. Now, I was president over there at that time, and I won't say what I said, okay? But I was angry. And I dealt with that, and we got those furnaces replaced, but one of the code enforcement people said, why do they even live here? And I looked at him, and he's working in another department now. He's very well paid. And I said, because it's all they can afford. His attitude was they should just move. Surely they've got more money than $400 a month to pay rent. And at the same time, you've got holes in the walls, leaking, molding going on, which drives up their utilities if they had heat. And this has been going on too long in this community. One day is too much. And I've been complaining about this process for 6 years. So I have had much more simple solutions to these problems. And I'm about out of time. But remember, I'm going to leave before public comments, so I'm going to give you back that 4 minutes. So I would kindly ask for an indulgence of 2 minutes.
2 minutes, so moved.
Remember, you get 2 for 1 here.
Good deal. Pretty good deal.
About that? Okay. I'm
been
here,
moved and
Bart.
seconded to-
I'm always here to negotiate, okay?
You're not getting
I do
more
some
than that,
lobbying
though.
too, you know? Okay.
Gotta reel it in. Any objections to 2 minutes? Okay, proceed.
So my solutions are much more narrowly focused than all the other ones you just heard, and they're good ideas. But they apply to poor homeowners, and that's a very small segment of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with landlords that can pay the bills. I too own property that I rent, and I take care of it. And you know, because I take care of it, I get, in my opinion, better renters. And I'm not castigating on anybody. I'm just saying they take better care of the property. I take care of them. They take care of me, my property, and we have a good working relationship. And some of them stay there for a long time. Now, what I want to see, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see court cost levied for everybody that comes into code court. And if the judge wants to waive that because of poverty, then let them fill out an affidavit, swear it under oath that that's their income and it's not being spent on anything else, and they cannot afford that fee. But let that judge have a legal reason to waive that, okay? I want to see court costs. I want to see fines levied when people do not fix their properties immediately. They get 30 days to paint something, then have it done in 30 days. I want to see reinspection fees for the people that have to go back out and go back and see if the work was done, okay? You might waive that first one, but I'm not going to waive over and over again for the next 6, 8 months, 9 months that you didn't want to do the work and you're just playing a game with the system. Quite frankly, this is economic development. You'll increase the tax base. You will get these people to spend money locally. They'll be paying sales tax on all those materials and building materials. They'll be hiring people, good contractors to actually fix the properties correctly and not just let them deteriorate. And so my program will get you a lot of money, and you won't have to spend public money in the end to fix up all these houses. It's very simple. So thank you for your time and your indulgence. Have a good evening. And I may not be back next week because we have a Christmas program I'm going to, so Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Won't that be great? Hallelujah.
Lazone, Graves.
All of that was
Yeah, top that.
Great.
oh my God.
Good evening again. Members of the governing council. First, you know, I, like Joe, I probably come here and speak a little bit more than I probably should. But I think that it's because I believe that the city can always be better. This is where I live. I want it to be better. It's a capital city. We should lead by example. And, you know, years ago when Mayor Wogas had his neighborhood summit, and they were going to focus the resources on sort of like the top 3 or 4 things that came about. It was trade skills, LMI trade skills centers in LMI communities, bike lanes, and code compliance. Well, we have Washburn Tech East. You know, I was the chair of that subcommittee. I feel proud on that one. I saw a lot of more bike lanes and funding for that. I think the only thing that really came out of code compliance was the passage of the International Property Maintenance Code. And maybe a few other staff and different things. But this has been sort of a tricky issue year after year after year. So it's not anything new. And what I've always asked within this changing of the culture of code compliance isn't anything new then. What I said back then and before then I will be saying right now. I'm glad that Ms. Glaude, what she had mentioned as far as moving it from a youth program, I think there's a lot of liability involved in that. But what came below that, you know, as far as a job for homeless and ex-offenders and community service. I'm saying this because it really all dovetails into a lot of what we're talking about anyway. Washburn Tech East isn't just something to feel good. It should be a place where people can go and actually get skills where they can be in the community actually working. Weatherization is a part of what is an allowable use of funds. Monies come in for those neighborhoods for weatherization. People may not have to go through formal programs through Washburn Tech, but I think that some of these code compliance issues, that there's the type of pre-apprenticeship, some type of training that people can get where they can actually become a part of crews and they are skilled in these neighborhoods. There are low-income fathers behind in child support and mothers who may be interested in learning some of the basic trade skills when we talk about, so the job training that I've always proposed would lead to the type of credentials that may not be gotten at a Washburn Tech, like mold remediation. I remember listening to a part of the video where someone was talking about ensuring where there was mold off into these homes. Leaky faucets. When it comes to weatherization and energy efficiency, some people, when they learn some of the skills, they may be able to do some things on their own. A good program where they learn skills and leave with the tools, they may not have to call the landlord or anyone else. They can fix those things right into their home or their grandmother's home or their friend's home. This is an opportunity, it seems, for people to get the skills. And so I concur, I appreciate Ms. Glaude because she has been there every step of the way all the years that I've been coming here, so that I'm glad that even though we'll be losing our city manager, we do have someone who is very competent in the continuity of what's going to be going on as we move into the beginning of the year and starting some type of initiatives, because at least someone there is well versed on where we have been and then where we are going. So in support of what Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and the Public Safety and Health Committee, and I know I chopped that probably up really bad. I'm very supportive of that. And again, how that can dovetail into the other type of job training programs and opportunities that we can put in the city that's going to last longer than 3, 4, 7, or 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, unless somebody wants to advance this more quickly, it's on for vote next week. So we can wrap this up. We'll get to that then and move on to close out our meeting with public comment. Let's see how that, somebody remind me. I guess not.
You would just open it up for public comment and then go through the list, Madam Chair.
Okay, so we do the public first and then we do our own.
Yes.
Got it. Need a reminder. Thank you. Sandra Lassiter, you're first up. I just get to watch.
Good evening, governing body and board. Just real quickly, I want to thank you again for opening up the arteries on 12th Street, Lincoln and Buchanan and all of those others. We thank you very much. We're really delighted about that. So we did what we were supposed to do for our community. I just want to leave the statement with you. We will not take our ball and go home. That we can disagree agreeably. And so there are a number of us that was very concerned with the positioning of the chief of police. And we give him our sympathy and our blessings because he has one of the most challenging jobs in the history of this nation, because we have a very unsettled atmosphere in our nation. And I think you're all pretty much aware of that. I pray that he's a man who is fair, who's just, and who is forthright. Although the process seemed a little like a smokescreen, and then we got information that was somewhat delayed. This is our home, and we will not take our ball and go home. We'll be here. I made a decision as I reflected on some of my past experiences with my school district, and that was my focus was not on the upper echelon or those persons that were making somewhat of a power decision, but my focus was always about the children. And even now that we have a school, a private school, but also has a lot of children from public and from other places as well, we decided that our product was more important than all of the power players, and that we love our children, that we're developing lifelong learners. We're developing persons who are quality and contributing citizens of our community. So, once again, we will not take our ball and go home. We will be like the woman and the unjust judge that just sat at the door and sat there until she was heard and respected, and some decisions were made for the betterment of all the people. So once again, thank you again for listening. And if the Lord blesses and allows us to live, since our life is like a vapor, we'll probably have an opportunity to come back, breathe again, and say what we need to say for the sake of our community. So thank you very much for this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question of the clerk maybe. On my list, I have number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's not a 1. Or is there somebody online or something I'm missing? Okay. The next person was to have been Joe Ledbetter. He has gone. Number 4 is John Rush. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, hey, I love this form of government. Sometimes you gotta face the front and center.
There you go.
Hello, City Council members, Topeka, and City Clerk. I get to listen to a lot of interesting views and stuff from people, and one thing I do want to say is that health and safety of the city is kind of the foundation, you know, for where we need to go. But I did have an issue, and it still hasn't really changed. But maybe I had been here 3 weeks ago, 21 days, and I was given a number, and my wife had left a message, and then a week later, 2 weeks ago, I left a message, and so now, but I still haven't heard back. And it's if we all remember back in October of 2000, there was a helicopter crash, and that helicopter crash was witnessed by a guy named Mike Trimble. Now, he quit flying because of that for a long time, but now you might know who Mike Trimble is. Well, he is a good pilot, and I have no doubt about that. But my question is that the health and safety of this city, with me at the podium, I'm going to say that on June 15th at 10:20 p.m., my wife was on the back deck of our house when a helicopter came up from the duplexes. I live on the east side of Lake Shawnee, right on the other side. I live on Peck. My name's John Rush, and that's where I live, over there on Peck. And there's a vacant field to the west of us. Then there's a row of duplexes. The helicopter came up. My wife is on the back deck now. Came up, slowly cleared the power lines, barely above the top of our house. Barely up top. Now, safety-wise, this is a very dangerous thing. I took it very personal. Last time I was in here, I let you know that because I wasn't there to protect my wife. I just feel, you know, and once I found out that he was there for an extended period of time with the spotlight shining from over the top of our house, and I want answers. I feel like I deserve answers. I think if you ask yourself, you'd want to know, you'd want answers too. I don't, you know, I think that I think that the city is a strong city. Okay, I think you got good possibilities. That we got a lot of things that we could do better at, and I just want to be part of this city. This is not where I necessarily grew up. I grew up in Salina, Kansas, and I went. I just want answers. That's all. You know, I just want you to understand that I think that it's important that I get answers, and I think that it's important and fair that for the health and the safety of myself and my family, that this would be it would be nice to have answers, and that's what I'm asking for. We both made phone calls, and none of our phone calls were returned, so I'm just asking that we can ask yourself, and I'd like to get that in writing or something. If it's not, if it's too busy to send me a phone call or, answer my phone calls or return them, then please just, help me with this, because, I want to see the city get better, and I'm not trying to make it, I just want us to be, I just want us to be pretty clear. So, whatever is going on, it's, I live within the means of the law. I just want to say I got an electrical license. I do things that are, I stay within the means of the law, and I'm not looking for trouble. And that, so this is my second time, and I'm not. I want to apologize for my public speaking, but I think there's a sense of urgency here because, and I hate to throw any names and things around, but. Either, what happens when you see a helicopter over someone's house?
I'm going to, if I may, you're over time at this point.
Okay.
It sounds like when you were here before, you connected up with some people on the way out. City manager, was it you or
Yes.
staff from PD?
Right, and
so if he's not getting responses to phone calls, maybe we could just,
I'll follow up with him tomorrow.
okay.
I think the information was provided, but I'll follow up and double check. I think the information that I received had been provided before, and I will verify and send the information again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back. We want to make sure you get what you need. Next person is Lizone Graves.
Okay.
One for you. And then I can get these two. If I may have. Thank you once again. Final visit for you tonight, of course. This here is really just, it's nothing new. It's revised for this year, and it's something I've shared with the city over the years, the JADO over the years. The snapshot is still pretty clear when I talk about stakeholders and other entities. I try to line it out here. A lot of this can help lead the way towards what other state agencies, state or federal funding that can be combined with whether it's ARPA, infrastructure, CDBG funds. When I talk about workforce training, transitional jobs, where these opportunities are, I interact with a lot of other entities, the state, DCF. There are federal funds under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act through the Workforce Center. Most of the time when I have a conversation with them or I'm at a meeting with them, there isn't anyone from the city. And when I'm with the city, there's not anyone from DCF or these places. But all these places are receiving monies to provide some type of services, resources, and opportunities for the people who live in the city of Topeka. And maybe if I can just sort of make a sheet for new council members and others so that they can see at a snapshot of who other players are. When we're talking about long-term projects, public funded projects, code compliance type of work, millions of dollars talking about these places going out doing the pre-work for lead pipes and different things. There's an opportunity of sometimes getting with companies who are needing workers, and there was an article in the paper just recently here. Survey, Kansas has older houses and too few workers in skilled trade. I'm always asking Santa Fe, other contractors, hey, do you have any on-the-job training opportunities or apprenticeships? They always say yes. Like, well, what's the minimum requirements? A lot of times, a lot of ladies and guys in the community here, they would fit these. if they knew about the opportunity. And so some of the programs, it's not so much that people are ready to go to work. I believe that over the years of not having opportunity, that can work on a person, so therefore they sort of lose that, I don't want to say work ethic, but that zeal and that fire. But there can be, and I'm hoping through the changing in property culture and property management, that we can have the type of programs where a person feels that if I get into this program and get some credentials, I'm really going to get my foot into the door of a job. Not just warehouse and manufacturing, but when you have the credentials of lead safe work practice, or you have lead abatement supervisor, CPR, OSHA, you have some credentials that show that you're actually able to get off and do a job and you're going to be a good candidate. There's several programs, DCF approved programs, that are helping single mothers, fathers, providing benefits if they are involved into approved programs that can lead off into these things here. And so I just want everyone to know that you're not really alone, that there are other existing programs and opportunities that I would hope that the city and department will start integrating into for the betterment of the citizens. A person who's wealthy isn't going to need much, but there's some good lower income citizens that we should be providing a better opportunity to. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else signed up on this list. City manager? Or first the clerk next week?
So
I'll get it.
December 14th meeting, we have 4 board appointments. On the consent agenda, we have a resolution declaring city boundaries. We have 1 at this time professional services contract. For action items, we have a real estate purchase agreement for property located at Southeast 30th and Powell. We have an ordinance for renewal of the AMR franchise agreement renewal. Resolution of advisability for Sherwood Park Number 9 subdivision benefit district, and that is for a street improvement. We have an ordinance for a zoning change located at 3245 Southwest Topeka Boulevard. And then we have the documents for approving changing the culture of property maintenance. Discussion items include the discussion on City of Topeka Digital Equity and Inclusion Statement of Commitment coming out of the Public Health and Safety Committee.
Manager?
Thank you, Councilwoman. Tonight, I want to inform the governing body that as part of our 2023 budget process, the city will be forming 5 work groups that will have a total of 125 people involved in the process. We will be blending council members, constituents, and staff to brainstorm and provide input to the governing body approved initiatives. More information will be coming to you tomorrow, but I wanted to let you know that we are working on this process. We're excited about it. It's an effort to get the community involved in the budget process. We're asking for your help in nominating community members to these work groups. So look at the information that we'll provide you. Start thinking of individuals that could be participants in this process. It's an opportunity that we've not had before. It's something that is new and innovative going on in some communities right now, and feel like it fits well with the initiatives that have been talked about by the governing body for a period of time. So look for more information and start thinking of who you would want to have involved in that process.
Thank you. Okay, I think the mayor goes first, right?
Yes.
Or is it last? Okay. Well, welcome everyone. The holiday season's upon us. We heard a report earlier about the success with the parade. If people were downtown, it was huge. It was well attended. I think people were really glad to see Miracle on Kansas Avenue re-emerge. We also had some pretty exciting news when, which I was helpful in getting into the local press, that the USS Frankie Peterson Jr., which is a brand new naval destroyer named after Frank Peterson, African-American native of Topeka, who was the first 3-star general in the Marines some years ago now, but that destroyer is named after him and launched out of the shipyard last week. You can still see it on YouTube if you want to. Capital Journal ran a front page article about it, and I think it was on WWW this evening. I got a text message, so it's getting a lot of play, and that was at the same week that Topeka High had its had more of its 150th anniversary celebrations. Those were well attended. He did graduate from Topeka High, and then we had Topeka High graduate Ruchetta Manager doing an incredible concert with local backup in Hayner Auditorium at Topeka High on Saturday night. So lots of good things happening. Upcoming, the new group that I think you all know I'm involved with, Topeka United, is hosting a program called Peace, a multicultural holiday evening at First United Methodist Church next Wednesday evening. It's a free event at 7 o'clock, and encourage you to pass the word on that. And I will wrap up at this point, just encouraging everybody to shop local, shop often. There's a lot of great merchants. It's a good time to be in Topeka. And with that, I'll hand off to, let's see.
Dobler.
Neil.
Thank you. Great job tonight, by the way. Ran a fine meeting. We'll see if Padilla can live up to the bar you set.
Well, you can push me on next time. You can your numbers up.
Just a couple of quick things. I've asked staff to prepare a resolution, I believe it is, to bring back the issue of setting retirement age for police department and fire department. I've had some discussions, and I think it's worth a debate again. There are some safety issues involved, and it seems that, at least on the fire department side, both the union and management are in support of bringing that back. So I think we'll have it on for a discussion item and then action here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I did just want to say, take a minute and talk about Bob Dole, kind of a hero of mine. I remember just a quick personal story. I remember seeing Bob Dole at the state fair when I was about 18, 19 years old, and you kind of know that it's somebody famous, I guess, for Kansas at the time. And I remember looking at the guy's, his belt was like old and chipped and falling apart, and I thought, what? Here's a guy that's powerful and well known and needs a new belt. But you know what? It was that generation that just could not. My mom was the same way. They just could not throw something away that was still useful. Dole represented, what I feel like. I'm a Republican. I'm a Dole Republican because I think it's imperative that we have political parties that can reach across the aisle, talk to each other, treat each other with respect, and, at some point, get things done. Unfortunately, we're not there right now, and I think, Dole's been in the news the last few days, and I think that's great because it brings back a little bit of a time when it seemed like we could get together, get things accomplished. Bob Dole pushed for the Americans with Disabilities Act. Imagine where we'd be if we didn't have that. So, great guy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman?
Just a reminder, it's Topeka's birthday this week. Turned 167 years old on December 5th. So I would just say happy birthday to Topeka, and we're going to hopefully lead it into the next, I guess I'll just focus on the next couple of years, but the next 167 years. So that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's see, we don't have District 9. I'm one. Councilman?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. One, I don't think we've talked about this, and I would like to ask the city manager if we can get some kind of projected costs for relocation of businesses that's going to happen with Polk Quincy. Do we have that?
Again. Say that again, relocation.
The projected costs for relocation of businesses with Polk Quincy Viaduct when that goes all into play?
The business relocations are being handled by the state, so.
They are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's not a cost that we will incur at all?
No.
Okay,
The only impact we'll have is that, and I think I've mentioned this before to most of you, all of you, is that our maintenance shed that we have next to the LEC will need to be demolished. So we will then be one of those individuals that's contacted by the state with a fair market value payment, and then we will find a new location. Staff is already starting that process of looking for where that next location might be.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, I just wanted to do a little shout out to all of the volunteers with our Oakland Community Garden. We guesstimated that we had about 1,200 pounds of produce that we gave out not only to a multitude of neighbors in our Oakland area, but we shared our produce with the Pioneer Group, Motive Power Apartments, La Colonia, Topeka Rescue Mission, the Gil Carter Initiative, Silverbacks, LULAC, CRC at Avondale, and also CRC at Lundgren. Those are just some of who we gave our produce to. The garden is closed for the winter. We're already in the stages of planning for next year. And it's just an example, a beautiful example of how neighborhoods can lean in. When with intention and with hard work, we can lean in towards each other. Also, just wanted to say that this past Saturday, I attended the TAG meeting. Oh, the acronym just loses me. I think it's Topeka Alliance for Good Government. It was a couple of hour meeting. I did a lot of listening. There was a wonderful segment that they had on a 60-minute piece. It was about 12 minutes on reimagining policing. And, you know, sometimes it seems like there's always the same people there. There were different people. There were younger people I saw. And I think that the bottom line is that they too just want to dialogue and continue dialogue, not only on continued increasing transparency of government, but also as being stakeholders in how we go about some of these big decisions that we're making right now. They want to be heard, and I think that there's still unmet expectations when it has to do with just and humane police reform. So I was glad that I took the time out on Saturday to sit and listen. And I want to thank all those folks for being there, especially the young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to wish Mr. Jack Alexander happy birthday. Today he's 91. If you get a chance, give him a call and congratulate him. He'd love to hear that. He's our first Black water commissioner, and he's still real alert and still real involved in his neighborhood. And that's all I have. I also wanted to just say that I went to my eye doctor today, and he dilated my eyes like later in the day. So I'm doing really good listening, but I can't see a thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, like Councilman Dover said, Bob Dole is a fantastic guy, and I think a model of how we should all comport ourselves and you know, and compromise, and you know, not everything's a fight. It doesn't have to be partisan. My gosh, we're all Americans. You know, that's the first thing. We're not Democrat or Republican or Independent. We're Americans first. So I really appreciate that about him. I was doing some figuring though as Councilman Dover was talking, and since you were 18 when you met Dole, what was he then, like 25?
27.
Oh, 27, okay. So, you know, I told you last time that a reoccurring theme I'm going to have is no more status quo, we have to grow. So it's occurred to me that we only hear about projects when a developer has an issue and reaches out to one of us. That's been my experience at least. Other than that, we often know little about projects that are being considered in our districts. So trying to establish some sort of feedback loop, I would like the council to get a list of pre-applications, active applications, and building permits on a weekly or bi-weekly basis from development services so that we can gauge the level of development demand, and I can send you this in an email. I would also
Please
like
do.
a list of applications that were voluntarily withdrawn or are stalled, so that either we or staff can reach out and understand the issues that developers are happening. As staff knows, a couple of weeks ago, a developer reached out, and there was kind of a misunderstanding with staff, and it was a major project that, had they not reached out to me and we got back with staff, it would have been dead. So we need some sort of feedback loop. There has to be. So that would be my request. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. In this season of giving and need, I really would like to just make sure that we are all considering, if you have the opportunity to give to the community around you, we had the Salvation Army earlier represented, but other great ways to go ahead and give back during this season. If you have plenty, I would like you to consider the Housing Trust Fund through the city's website, Doorstep, and the Topeka Rescue Mission. These are all services in our community that really do need our support all year long, but especially in this time when that need can just be, that gulf between need and want can grow even greater. Please keep those organizations and those people they serve in your thoughts, prayers, and giving considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think this is the end of our formal meeting. We have 2 executive sessions. Remind me the length of each, please.
The first one is not to exceed 10 minutes. The second one is not to exceed 30 minutes.
Okay, so it looks like what we need to do is get past a resolution that we can extend past 10 p.m. and then go ahead and set the parameters for the first executive session, but go ahead and take another 10-minute break before we start the executive sessions while the room clears so that we can come back and just shoot through both of them. Sound like a plan?
So,
All right.
Madam Chair, I'd move that we extend our meeting to the end of the agenda, to the end of the executive sessions, past 10 o'clock.
Moved and seconded to extend past 10 o'clock until we get done. Any comments? Any objections? All right, that's passed. Now, let's see, I have to get the elaborate language for, would the city attorney please state the motion for the first executive session?
Yes. The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 10 minutes to discuss the acquisition of real property for utility purposes pursuant to KSA 754319B6. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers. The following staff may be needed to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Manager Trout, Chief of Staff Cochran, Utility Director Copley, and City Attorney Stanley.
So moved.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? All right, we have set that first meeting. It will start in roughly 10 minutes, as soon as we get everyone, the room cleared and everybody reconnected.
If you have an extra, I'll take one, but wait and see. Okay.
All right, we have finished our first executive session. No action has been taken. City Attorney, would you give us the parameters for our second?
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 30 minutes to discuss the city's cybersecurity audit pursuant to KSA 754319B12. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers. The following staff may be needed to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Manager Trout, Chief of Staff Cochran, Information Technologies Director and CISO Biswell, Director of Finance Wade, HR Director Russell, and City Attorney Stanley.
So moved.
Did you get that? Second. We are echoing pretty badly, but it doesn't matter, right? All right. All right. We have had a motion and a second. Are you keeping the minutes? Okay. Any objections? All right, 30 minutes. Oh. Was that an objection or voting for it?
Still be at the Jets.
Okay.
There's still 6 to 1.
One objection for the record.
Who did the motion and second again?
I made the motion.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
With that, we will adjourn into executive session. Thank you. We've come out of executive session. Am I live?
Yes.
We've come out of executive session. No action was taken. Council meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.